That's right. It's the inevitably nonsensical, yet hopefully enjoyable, After Movie Diner. If you enjoy the show and have pursued the recommended treatment from your medical providers, why not support the show on Patreon? Over at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Rate and review the show wherever podcasts are found, and rating and reviewing is possible. Even a 1-star review provides useful insights on exactly the sort of petty-minded and wretched individual who negatively reviews free entertainment they do not need to be consuming. So, without further dribbling, please put down your lemon meringues for the one, the only, John Cross.
Well, hello there. Do you know how you are careering towards middle age? Do you know how to tell that? You sit down to edit your podcast with a glass of neat whiskey in front of you. Smooth. Anyway, I thought I would do a little introduction because we are going to pick up the conversation halfway through. Matt and I were talking all about holidays, Christmas, New Year, things like that, Easter, things like that. And then we got on to harvest. I don't know how, but we did. And I've sort of cut out all that other stuff because it isn't really needed. But the harvest thing starts up a running gag that I believe kind of goes through most of the show. So you have to listen to it. So we pick up, we've been talking about holidays, and then we go on to talk about harvest. Don't ask why, just go with it. All right, thanks, bye. We should also celebrate harvest. And I know that growing up, the Protestant church has like a harvest Sunday where they, everyone brings pumpkins and stuff that are donated to the poor. Every Easter, that one poor guy at the back of the hostel who's looking forward to all this food but hates pumpkin. And now everything that everyone donates is just, he's like, he sees like boxes of cereal. Oh, someone's donated some cereal. And then he looks at it, it's like pumpkin spice, shredded wheat or something. He's like, oh, fucking pumpkin spice. He hates pumpkin. And so they think that they're doing this wonderful thing, donating to charity. And 90% of people are fine with it. But there's that one pauper who just goes hungry all the way through to the end of... Anyway, I don't know what... Some kind of Dickensian thing. But anyway...
Dickensian?
Was Dickensian except everything has pumpkin spice in it.
Right, the long lost, Mr. Pumpkin Man, I can't think of a good name for the pumpkin guy, the pumpkin popper guy, right? Right. Mr. Piddly Pocket or something like that.
Yeah, he would be Mr. Pumpkiny Pocket or something. Yeah, Ernst Pumpkiny Pocket, from old London town.
Yeah, somebody's gonna dig that up. Somebody's gonna go into Dickens' old house that's somewhere in England that's restored. Somebody's gonna find Mr. Piddly Pockins, whatever, the manuscript, and be like, oh my God, look at this book! It's 150 years old.
It's all about this pauper urchin, really, just a ne'er-do-well of the worst kind who doesn't like pumpkin. But every harvest, all the churches in the land go, well, we'll have a harvest festival. But as the years went by, everything became pumpkin spice, so he couldn't avoid it. And he went so poor and thin and ill and angry that by the time Christmas rolled around and people were donating things like cake and, large buns and turkeys and whatever, I don't know, what do you have? Oranges with cloves in it and stuff, whatever Christmas thing. Did you ever do that, by the way, at school? Where you take the orange and you put cloves in it and a string through it, and that's another kind of pagan-y, Germanic. Yeah. It's probably to ward off evil badgers or something. Hang that from the doors, to ward off the evil badgers who come every December 26th, because it's the badgers and the evil. We put the oranges with the cloves and the cherry and anyway, I have no idea what I'm saying. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
My wife and I, during the Christmas period, we were watching on Music Choice on the cable channel. They were doing classic Christmas, and they would have all these facts about Christmas, and it was 90% of it was, Germanic people, Nordic people, whatever, they did this thing. Yeah. So it's they bring a tree in the house because it represented life, and now we bring a tree in the house so the cats can knock it over.
The Nordic people always have the parade of the dwarfs.
Right.
And it's just they get all the little people in like Norway and Sweden and Iceland or whatever, and they dress them up in like furs, animal furs, and like horns and stuff, and they parade them across a glacier. And every year, all the little people are like, "Jesus, what the fuck? Why do we have to do this? This is like abuse. I don't want to be out here on a glacier. I hear that these things are melting. I don't want to be out here on a glacier while it's melting, dressed in animal furs and a horn, just because of some weird Nordic rites where they think that little people are somehow mystical creatures." I think that's probably what happens. Well, we do have a Swedish listener, Philippe O'Neill. Yeah. So let us know, Philippe. Do you parade dwarfs as some kind of winter Nordic
and I wonder
rite?
if Fred Anderson listens too. Who's a lot of times he's on the Exploding Helicopter podcast. And he's like an expert in disaster movies. So every once in a while he'll be on to do like Towering Inferno or something like that. He's from Sweden as well, so he might also be able to tell us. Oh,
nice. Yes. No, let us know. And look, if we are in any way upsetting you by exclaiming that your country folk would parade dwarfs dressed as bizarre winter nymphs across a glacier, if that's making horrible xenophobic assumptions about your country, then I apologize. But you please, as an Englishman, feel free to call us all a bag of cunts, because we are. And we're awful too. I just said we cover everything in pumpkin spice and neglect the one pauper that wants nothing to do with pumpkins. And who can blame?
Yes. I feel like if that wasn't Ritual, that Bergman would have had some kind of movie where there was like Max von Sydow or another actor who's been in a lot of those movies with like, I don't know, BB. I can't think of her last name, but like they would be like having this like tense but like understated, tense conversation while the dwarves were walking by in the fort, like kind of in the background.
No, you'd have Max von Sydow in close up, his huge domed, Nordic face just there in the corner of the screen, and then in the background a perfectly flat glacier, and you would just see the like trudging kind of little dwarf folk with the horns or whatever lit up, holding like flaming torches or whatever in the background, and Sydow would be talking about the painful irrelevance of existence or something.
Exactly. Is it Bibi Anderson? Is that the actress I was thinking of? Or maybe not. I looked up online and I see like other actresses that I don't. One of the things I've discovered with Bergman is it's not easy to look up his movies if you don't know the Swedish, because they've all been remade in in English by American. Like I looked up The Silence and somebody else had remade The Silence. It's just I guess everybody wants to and I don't think you could ever pull off Bergman having two people, Max von Sydow and somebody Ingrid Thulin, whoever else having an argument with dwarves walking around doing a Christmas processional the way that Bergman could shoot that. Like nobody should remake Bergman stuff. Yeah.
No, but we should make some kind of mad Nordic movie about a dwarf processional that one year gets hijacked by some villainous dwarfs. Right. So there's like an American. Or who would be villainous to the Nordic people? I don't know, Siberians or Russians or something
Germans,
like that.
Right? Nobody likes the Germans. Right?
Everyone hates the Germans. Yeah, we can fuck up. We can shit on the Germans.
Yeah.
All right, let's just shit on the Germans. I don't think many people like the Russians either, but the Russians might actually be listening to this.
Yes,
or at least my cell phone is listening.
I have German listeners as well, but it feels like.
Listening through our cell phones. Like the Russians are listening through the internet. They go, wait, I think someone just insulted our national heritage. Right, yeah. They must find these people and blow them up immediately.
Suddenly our Skype accounts are just going to get all these bots spamming us. Right? Like we're just going to.
I get that anyway. I get it. Exactly. Who is spamming Skype in 2024? Like what people? It's like people who still send out email junk mail. Why? Yeah. Why are you doing it? Who? Are there that many people falling for, the Nigerian print scam or the, Pornhub's lost your zip code. Please enter your zip code again into Pornhub or whatever it is that you get. I look at some of this spam and I'm just like, what year are we living in? But someone must be falling for this horseshit.
The smart one that they do now is you get this spam email that it may or may not look great, but it says essentially like, hey, thanks for signing up for this $500 a year thing. And you're supposed to go, what? I didn't sign up for a 500. What kind of mistake? What kind of craziness is this? And then you just want to like get it removed right away. Because I think there's a satisfaction in complaining to somebody and getting something removed or reversed or something like that. Yeah. And they play on that satisfaction that people have. And so what people do is they just call up and give all their information to get this fake charge that doesn't even exist removed by someone who's able to spoof the email of like Best Buy or somebody like that.
Yeah, I don't fall for any of that shit. If the only people I answer an email are people who I know for a fact are people I know. Everything else gets deleted. I have no time for that shit. I've probably got, like, there's probably some distant relative who's like, by the way, you're a multi-millionaire. And they've been emailing me and I'm just like, no, lies, delete. And I'm probably sat here a pauper hating pumpkin spice. And while, in the background somewhere in my extended family is some sort of cousin my dad didn't know that he had. And I'm somehow the only one left in the lineage to receive his millions.
You fleshed out the rest of the Dickens novel, the Long Lost Dickens novel. Right. Yeah, Mr. Piddly Pockins he's like removing, all these letters are coming to him by the post, and he's like throwing them out.
Mr.
And here's
Pumpkiny Pockets.
Mr. Pumpkiny Pockets. His rich uncle is off in this like mansion somewhere, writing these letters like, "Oh, I want my nephew,"
And he keeps getting them, and he's like, "Bah humbug," and he's tearing them up.
Exactly.
It's probably from the Pumpkin of the Month Club, and I don't want any part of that pumpkin nonsense. He's like, I curse the day that they ever invented pumpkin spice. He shudders next to Starbucks in the winter months, just being like, why? Sorry, I don't know. We're going all over the place. I don't know that anyone is following this, but I have been recording the whole thing, so it will be in the episode. But it's fine. I feel like our opening ramble this time, I think, matches very well with the structure or lack thereof of Tough Guys Don't Dance.
Yes.
Which is one of the few movies that at least has a flashback within a flashback. If not a flashback within a flashback within a flashback. Because at a certain point, once you get 3 flashbacks deep, I'm really lost. But I feel like our opening preamble had 3 flashbacks deep. Anyway, sorry.
No, what's crazy about it is in the actual book itself, right? The whole flashback thing, it's essentially a paragraph where the main character just gets his dad up to speed on everything that's happened so far in the book.
Right.
It's like, but it happens at roughly the same point as when we get back. It's like I don't know, like 3/4 of the way through the book, and it's just like one paragraph. Oh, I sat Dougie down and I got him up to speed on what was happening. And for some reason, Mailer decided to make the whole movie that one paragraph of when he is getting him up to speed on everything. Yeah, it was it's a fascinating idea. This movie is for Nora Mailer to say this is the adaptation I want to direct of my book.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating.
Oh no, the fact that Norman Mailer was such a fan of this and talks so highly of it is a delight to me. A delight to me because we'll get into it in a minute, but Tough Guys Don't Dance, especially watching it last night, and that's the second time I've seen it all the way through. So the first time I saw it all the way through was way back when in the cinema. Nighthawk Cinema in Brooklyn used to do these, and may still do, these Thursday nights that were what they called the do screenings.
Yeah.
And it was movies that had a life on 42nd Street, but had not had much life since. Yeah. So they used to find sort of when certain movies screened, they would go back into the archives and go, okay, when did this movie screen? What year? What month? What was its opening weekend, etc. And that's how they would do the do screening. So I was able to see a pretty scrappy and pinkened screening of this movie. So it was not a great print, but I was able to see that a few years back. I mean, certainly within the last 9 years, because I remember seeing it with Kim. So probably within the last 8 years, I had seen it. And it certainly come in my awareness. And then I now have the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. So that's what I watched last night. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Vinegar. So does that have the Mailer commentary track? I had no idea that existed.
Yeah, so it has. It doesn't have the Mailer commentary track.
Okay.
No, it has the archival featurette, which is Norman Mailer in Provincetown, which is basically an extended interview with just him. Yeah. I thought it had a commentary, but I don't know. It has an interview with his son. It has an interview with Wings Hauser. It has an interview with the cinematographer. I thought it had a commentary, but now I'm not seeing one, so maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, so there might be an earlier DVD because Mailer's commentary is supposed to be a trip, like the stuff that he said. So one other quick fact about him being in Provincetown. I recently had to have a thing on my back taken care of, and I had to go into urgent care to get a follow-up checkup on it. The doctor there, he saw that I was reading Tough Guys Don't Dance, and he asked about it. And it turned out when he was younger in the 70s, when he was like, or maybe it was even the 80s, I don't know, but when he would work in the summers in Provincetown, and he met Mailer.
Awesome.
So technically, I guess I'm one degree of separation away from Norman Mailer. Well,
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And by extension, only two steps away from Wings Hauser, which is the more important of the two in our movie loving. But yeah, so Tough Guys Don't Dance from 1987. It is a Canon Films production in association with Zoetrope Studios of one Mr. Francis Ford Coppola, who basically, I think Norman Mailer's producer went to Zoetrope, and Coppola was like, for Mailer, sure, anything,
Yes, exactly.
Because who doesn't want to see, like, it's so fascinating because this movie is based on a novel that he wrote within 2 months. Like, he bashed this novel off in no time because he was contractually obligated to his current or then publisher for one more novel, and he'd been spending their stipend that they've been giving him, or his per diem or whatever, for like months and months and months. And they'd be like, wait, what are you doing? You got to give us a book. So he wrote this book. And, it was this sort of shaggy dog murder mystery with sort of spiritual elements and ghost elements and other stuff like that. It's sort of all over the place. And then this was so I'm a big fan, Matt. I'm with you on this. I'm a big fan that this was the movie he wanted to make. And I know that a big part of that was that he just wanted to film shit in Provincetown. I get that. Like, he had such a hard on for this, for the tip of the finger of Massachusetts, as she says in the movie. She says, do you know the other filmic character who has said Massachusetts in the same way as she does?
No, I don't.
In Silence of the Lambs, it's the doctor who fancies her, the sleazy doctor.
Oh, right.
That actor is a judge on Boston Legal. And in Boston Legal, that actor, and he may even see it in Silence of the Lambs as well. He may even pronounce it this way as well. But in Boston Legal, that actor, and you can picture him. He's the guy, he always plays a villain. You know what I mean? The slimy doctor, and I can't think of his name right now. But he's a judge on Boston Legal, and he's always like, how dare you defame the fine state of Massachusetts? And the woman, the ex-porn star in this...
Right.
Who is flirting with O'Neill at the bar in front of her cuckolded husband, in quite one of the most bizarre sequences in the whole film. She refers to Provincetown on the tip of the finger of Massachusetts,
right?
Which is just wonderful.
Right? Yeah. And, was that in the book? It's interesting in the book because what was I going to say about that character, like the whole cuckolding and all of that stuff there? It's just it's completely different. And like in the book, there's more to it. There's more, kind of. And again, it's one of those things about this movie that things that work in a novel sense, where you can expand on things and pull, that in a movie where you've just kind of put them out there, just make them happen. They're almost like random, and they're just it almost kind of thrown together. And it kind of made it weird for me watching the movie, because I was like, okay, I know what that guy's backstory is, and I know why he's going through all of this, and I get all of it. But when you watch the movie, you don't read the book. because you're technically not supposed to have read the book when you see them. Like, they're not supposed to be the same thing.
Right.
You're like, why is this guy putting up with this? Like, why is he doing any of this stuff? Like, why is any of this stuff happening here? It's fascinating how he did that.
Well, yeah, and what I think what I love about the thing that I haven't heard mentioned, and I watched a bunch of interviews and I watched some reviews and stuff like that. The thing that I don't think gets mentioned about Tough Guys Don't Dance and its filmic quality. I know everyone talks about the cinematography and they talk about the acting and the music and whatever. We'll get onto all of that, but.
Right.
I was tempted while watching it last night, and I'm not even kidding, especially the first act, of turning the color down on my TV. And the reason why is that he has so written the screenplay like a 40s film noir, right? Yeah. And what people don't, I think people who think of film noir who don't watch a lot of it, think of whether it's Sunset Boulevard or Casablanca or, Angels with Dirty Faces or what, I mean, I don't know, pick your very Double Indemnity, pick your very famous Maltese Falcon, Big Sleep, black and white film noir movie, right? For every one of those, there are 100 B pictures. Film noir was a B genre most of the time. And a lot of those B films were great areas for especially women directors to throw their hat in the ring and do some incredible work. I know Ida Lupino makes some incredible ones for very little money. And there are some other great B pictures. But there are also the like shonky, cheesy, quotable but messy B movie film noirs that are trying to emulate the sort of rambling Chandler-esque nature of Big Sleep and stuff, but doing it in a very kind of slapdash fashion. But equally they have their own charm, just like Star Wars has its charms, and then like very B Roger Corman Star Wars knockoffs have their charms, right? There's different movie going experiences, and he writes this, and there's part of me that has got to believe it's intentional, because the way he rattled off the novel was very much like, well, the only thing I can do is a pulp detective story. So let me write in a pulp detective style. It's going to be new for me and it's going to be exciting, and I can just emulate a bunch of people that I already have in my head, kind of thing. Yeah. And I feel like whether he gave it a lot of thought or whether he didn't, I feel like when he came to write the screenplay for this, or certainly when he came to direct it and kind of, I think, give some direction to the actors, if you turned down the color of this movie, or even if you stood in another room and just listened to the dialogue and didn't know what this movie was, you would assume you were about to walk in on like a black and white, 1930s, 1940s, gangster murder mystery B-pick. Like, that's what you would think you would walk into. And I think if you can dial into that a little bit, but also realize that he's trying to make a ghost story, but also realize that he's trying to make a comedy. Like, when you put those three things together and you go, he's trying to make a comedy, which he's already admitted, it has a sense of humor, it's meant to. He's trying to make a ghost pick, a sort of eerie, get under your skin, is it in your head or is it not in your head kind of ghost story, right? And he has written it like a 1940s pulp film noir movie, right? Much in the same way that he wrote the book. When you think of it like that, when you dial into it like that, he succeeds on every level. Like, he succeeds on every level doing that. Yeah. He really does. And I was, I know people make a claim against this movie, it's not that easy to follow. And no, it's not that easy to follow. But if you follow it, and you can follow it, you can add everything up and you can follow it, and it certainly has film logic, if not actual logic. It makes a lot more fucking sense than something like The Big Sleep. Even if it does throw in a lot of like wacko side characters into the mix just for fun or to make statements. So I have to say, having watched this again last night, I know there is a lot of derision out there for this movie, and I also know it's one of those movies that people frustratingly watch ironically, But I fucking enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious, but I also fucking enjoyed it for what I think it was trying to be.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the novel is the best description of the novel that I saw when I was reading the reviews on the cover. Somebody said it's like if Julia Child made a hamburger, right? Like hamburgers are hamburgers, but if Julia Child made a hamburger, it would be, it'd still be a hamburger, but it would be a different kind of hamburger. And that's kind of what this book is. It's like if, Norma Mailer making a hamburger or making a pulp novel, And this movie is not that kind of thing. Like this movie is not like Norman Mailer making his own like kind of schlock movie of the week kind of thing. Because some of the actors kind of make it feel like that. Like John Bedford Lloyd, who is now is having his birthday today actually, or Deborah Stipe. Like they kind of feel like Matlock, movie of the week kind of actors. And then you've got Ryan O'Neal, who's just Ryan O'Neal, he's about 15 years older than the character was supposed to be in the book. Right. But it was just like, oh, we got Ryan O'Neal, let's do that. I mean, a lot of things that it feels like a lot of changes were made because it was like we can get somebody. Like Isabella Rossellini in the book, it's supposed to be an Italian American person, not an actual Italian. But it's like, oh, we got Isabella Rossellini, and her obviously her character has a bigger part in the book than she does in the movie. But it's just like, great Isabella Rossellini, let's do that. Right.
Well, because the other thing. So first of all, he's already admitted that in the interview on the Blu-ray, he talks about how it was written as an Italian American, and Italian American have certain like chutzpah or gumption or no nonsense BS kind of way of doing stuff, or certainly the way Italian Americans are written in popular fiction. That's how they're written. Whereas the Italians, and certainly someone like Isabella Rossellini, brings her own kind of more sort of glacial, haunting, qualities. And what he really liked about the version of the woman in the movie, played by Isabella, was that she showed you in her acting, emotion, and everything else, just how much Ryan O'Neal's character, Tim Madden, has just devastated her and hurt her and destroyed her. But also shows you why she can't let that relationship go. But to your point, the other two elements that I would pour on the pulp film noir and the ghost story and the comedy that he's trying to make is that, and this is invariably where the criticisms of the movie come from, is that when he doesn't quite nail the film noir patter and dialogue, it does slide very quickly into soap opera territory. It just slides very quickly into sort of, and it doesn't help that while someone like David Lynch would sort of perfect this a few years later in Twin Peaks, this sort of eerie soap opera meets detective story meets, misty, weird, oddball, up in the mountains kind of TV show and soap opera and detective show, whereas David Lynch would sort of somewhat perfect it. The problem with Tough Guys Don't Dance is because they've gone for this very interesting minimalist pastel cinematography where everything is sort of just, it's like dull pastel. The whole movie is sort of dull pinks and dull blues and dull yellows and dull greens. It's all sort of, it has a little bit of a haze over it, but more in a glossy sense and less in a, you never quite feel the bitter cold like you would if the cinematography was leaning into the nature of like a rocky outcrop in New England in the winter. It would be different. Here, it more feels like a Miami version of Provincetown, in the sense that he sort of wanders around in jean jackets and there's a lot of pastel stuff and he drives like a Jeep. It sort of feels like he wants it to be a summer movie, but he's filmed it in the depths of winter, So it's sort of this weird thing. And that's why, especially with people like Deborah Stipe and John Bedford Lloyd, but even Ryan O'Neal in his moments, it can slide into soap opera territory pretty quick because soap opera uses cliche dialogue in the same way that film noir does. Now, when you do it the film noir way, it's like cool and badass, and you're like, oh my God, I wish everyone talked like that all the time. Yes. But then other times when you say it more in a matter-of-fact way, or in a way where the set was just not conducive to a good acting performance or whatever it is, it just slides right back into the kind of cliche of soap opera.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, the pastels piece too, thinking about Mailer and where he might have been drawing inspiration from. I mean, Miami Vice was big at that time, and that was, pastel film noir that Michael Mann was doing. And so that might have been another inspiration for him, that he was, I mean, he was probably that kind of older guy that was like into whatever the kids were into. He probably had a members only jacket and stuff like that at that time. So he was probably trying to draw from that too. But I mean, the other thing I kind of feel that I kind of like about this, and I was talking about it with you earlier, is that there's this weird time for canon where they were trying to be respectable, I guess, or they wanted to have both blockbusters and, art house respectable kind of movies.
So this is the fifth part that you add to the other four parts. The fifth part is it's a canon movie. Anyway,
exactly. Yeah. Well, because, they'd had John Cassavetes make a movie, and it was one of those deals where they kept trying to get him to make the movie shorter, and he kept making it longer. Then they get Godard, which I talked with you about, where Godard was going to make King Lear, which I don't know if you've ever seen his King Lear. It's so off the wall and ridiculous. But Mailer's in it for a little bit. And the reason why he's only in it for a little bit, and I was telling you this, before, is that he wanted Mailer to do a love scene with Mailer's daughter. And Mailer, of course, absolutely refused and said, no, I'm not going to do that. So
is that the one Molly Ringwald is in?
Exactly. That's the one. Yes.
It's so weird. Exactly. But it again, that kind of highlights something. The reason why I say, it's a canon picture, and you were reminding me earlier when you were talking about, like, well, we got Isabella Rossellini. Well, we got, Ryan O'Neal. Well, we got these people. Is, we got Lawrence Turney. What can we do with it? Kind of thing. Right. Is that whether canon was making action pics, or whether they were making, Godard films or Zeffirelli movies or whatever it was, there was always, or even when Menachem Golan was making his own movies, it didn't matter necessarily they never picked actors because who they were best for or what role they were best for. Exactly. They just went, who do we have available? And they just, we've got three names, and we put them in the movie. And it's fun seeing that they were like, well, who do we have? Well, Molly Ringwald needs some work. Well, put her in the Godard King Lear. What? What is that? Why would that? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But, they were doing shit like this, and that kind of explains, although Ryan O'Neal and Norman Mailer had known each other socially on and off. But anyway, it's certainly cast in that way, and all the better for it. I mean, all the better for it.
Yeah, it just adds another level to this, which is just so much fun. That we're like you said. I mean, and then of course, like you talk about, like the different levels. I mean, we get to Wings Hauser. I mean, he is not the book character. Like, so the character that he's supposed to be playing in the book, I wouldn't have imagined Wings Hauser. But this adaptation that Norman Mailer's doing, Wings Hauser is perfect for this role.
Oh, yeah. And what's hilarious is that Norman Mailer and Wings Hauser clashed initially because Wings was sort of wingsing it up a little bit. Not that he isn't in the final movie either, but he was very Norman Mailer said his problem was that Wings kept gesticulating and like moving his hands as he was talking. And what's weird about that is I don't think of Wings as sort of a particularly like hand actor at all, but apparently that's what Norman Mailer said happened. Yeah. In Wings Hauser's interview, he just said that Norman Mailer like kept giving him notes and it was driving him nuts, and it basically came to a head, and they had a big fight, and then they agreed to go back to work, and everything was fine. And Wings was giving such a great performance that Norman Mailer's done nothing but like compliment him ever since. So they kind of made up, and everything's great. But I mean, first of all, definitely watch Tough Guys Don't Dance. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers or anything like that, like turn off now, I guess, or fast forward to Hologram Man, which will be coming up later. But so it's definitely one worth to watch. Definitely, I would definitely watch it. Track it down, watch it. I think if it's Vinegar Syndrome, it's probably streaming online somewhere, and it's just so peculiar because it does. The reason why I keep mentioning like these types whether it's film noir, whether it's soap opera, whether it's comedy, whether it's a ghost story, whether it's a canon movie, is because it is all of those things. You can't say that it's not one of those things. It is. It contains. It's one of these weird movies that it contains multitudes. It really does contain multitudes, because it's not. And there's a great quote by Wings Hauser where he says something like, "No, it's not a normal movie. We don't always need to have a normal movie."
Right.
And I'm like, you're right, Wings. We don't always need to have a normal movie. Right. But I think because Mailer was such a fan of film and was so enjoying the role of director, he has nothing but positive things to say about the job of directing. He has nothing but positive things to say about his cinematographer. He has nothing but positive things to say about his cast. Like, he was very happy making this movie, he said, despite the odd arguments with Wings Hauser about his giant hands. He's like, I'm gonna tell Wings to sit on his fucking hands if he keeps keeps waving them fucking meat hooks about. Mailer just grumpy in Provincetown. It's too fucking cold for this shit, Wings. Sit on your hands. But no, he has nothing but happy things to say about making the movie, but all of it, I think, comes through. So I think he is deliberately playing with cinema a little bit. But he also knows, because it's odd, right? Because he's clever enough and a good enough writer to know how to play with the rules of cinema. But he's novice enough in making movies that it might just be unintentional. It's one of those things, and we've said this so many times, but all the best movies that we love, these movies that talk to us, whether it's the Wings House, the PM Entertainment, the Donald Pleasance, whatever it is, and most of them are plucky little indies or plucky little B movies that go just far enough out of the norm that they hold their place in, a pantheon of fun movies to have in your back pocket on a rainy day kind of thing. And I think you and I sort of feel very similar about these kind of films and have a similar passion about these kind of films. And, and that's, this one walks that line, like so many of them do, between, do they know that they're sort of deconstructing cinema and then putting it back in like a sort of shitty, messy way on purpose? Or are they just not good enough yet that they know the cliches, like they know the beats one is meant to have in a movie, and they know the kind of tropes that they want to use, but they're just not expert enough to use them fluidly, so the movie still comes off a little left of center. And you can't tell. You can't tell whether they're in on the joke or they're not, Well, the other thing is that he has 3 other movies he directed, and they're all Criterion films. So Criterion put the first 3, they came out like a late, they were
60s.
sort of experimental art films, right? Yeah,
right,
sort of
exactly.
Warholian type stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think he must have had this sense that, like, 17 years later, the muscle memory was all still there. It's like, I made a movie before, I can make a movie again. And but like you said, these aren't these like sort of experimental Warholian things. It's like, but it has a sense of that, but also because like when you read about, as we get into the film and some of the things, the choices that were made, it's almost like kind of like a late Beatles John Lennon just being like, no, let's just keep that in, and all the beat, like there's probably plenty of Beatles songs where Lennon said, let's just keep that in, that sound horrible. But there's so many that are classics that you're just like, like Strawberry Fields Forever, something like that, where you're just like, oh, he just randomly decided to keep something in, and it's a masterpiece.
That's such a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Mailer thought he had a lot of Strawberry Fields Forever, when maybe it's sort of other songs off Beatles albums that nobody really listens to unless you're like huge Beatles fans.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, look, it never quite gets as bad as Maxwell's Silver Hammer, but it occasionally, it sort of veers between, this is a great thing. Sometimes Tough Guys Don't Dance is full-on Penny Lane, and the fucking whistle trumpet is playing away, and you're soaring away, and you're on the top of that fire engine that he's singing about, and you're going through Liverpool, and everything's glorious. And then other times it's Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and you're like, Paul, what the fuck, dude? You know what I mean? Sometimes it's maybe I'm amazed, and sometimes it's temporary secretary. You know what I'm saying? Like, And both things can exist because we know in McCartney that both things exist.
Right.
So both things can exist for Mailer too. And I don't mind that though. I love the cacophony of madness that produces.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing, because it's Mailer, thinking about like late era Beatles. I mean, I guess the Beatles had each other to check each other, to be like, no, we shouldn't do this. We should do this.
They still did Maxwell Silver.
Right. They did, exactly. But it's like if Paul McCartney went into a studio to make an album right now, no one would tell Paul McCartney you shouldn't do such, whatever, certain things. Right. And I think that's Mailer in the late 80s. Nobody was going to tell Mailer, don't do something. And I mean, I guess unless it's Wings Hauser saying, don't send me Post-it notes telling me how I should act as a scene. But for the most part, people are going to be like, hey, if that's how you want to do it, Mr. Mailer, let's do it.
Right.
And in some cases, that's why you get something so crazy here, is because nobody's, like the Canon people, they thought they were going to get this sort of like this indie cinematic masterpiece. That's what they thought they were getting. And
well, also they used to force cinemas to take both picks. So if they knew they had a Bronson movie coming out that everyone wanted, right? Because everyone was, gaga for Bronson back in the 80s. Why we're not now, I have no idea. But we should be, because he left a legacy. Check out The Stone Killer, one of the best Michael Winner movies ever. Fucking Bronson is amazing in that. Anyway, such a great 70s funk soundtrack as well. But I love that movie. I just recently discovered that movie with my friend Jay, and it blew me away. I love it. What was I talking about? How did I get on? Sometimes they would be selling the distributors or the cinema on. Well, in order to get the Bronson pick, you have to take Cassavetes' "I'm Fucking with Golem and Globus" movie, or you have to take Zeffirelli's Othello, or you have to take, whatever. He would package them in that way. Similar. I mean, Roger Corman used to do the same when he would buy Italian and Spanish language movies, redub them for American audiences, and then when he would send them out to the drive-ins, he would package, an alien picture, an action picture, and a art house picture, and he would just be like, you have to take all three. And that's how he would get like weird, Swedish or Danish or German or whatever kind of movies out into the drive-ins, and why they were able to get American distribution, and very often the only life they had. And so, Golem and Globus, it's so interesting when you look at like the Corman School or their PM Entertainment that would come after Canon, and even New Image that branched specifically off Canon and would go on to make like the Expendables and things. Everyone knew how to do it better than Golem and Globus. But meaning they knew how to stick to budgets, they knew where to put the money, they knew who to hire and who not to hire. They knew that you could get a stable of stars without having to buy them. You could actually grow them and build them yourself. And they knew all this about making movies. Golem and Globus knew how to do it if everyone in the boardroom had a stick of dynamite under their seats. That's how Golem and Globus knew how to do it. Do you know what I mean? They knew how to. They knew all of the things. They were like, put the money on the screen, not not in the trailer or at the craft service table, or giving clothes to women, or anything with that required in zero temperatures. They knew not to like waste money on things like basic comforts and human rights. What they did know how to do though was to put lots of money into either stars, which would be ultimately their downfall, was the ridiculous amounts of money they paid Stallone to be in Over the Top. And Christopher Reeve in Superman 4 and various other things. Not that I'm blaming Reeve. I mean, Reeve deserved it, you know what I mean? Because he was stuck in that role, sadly. But they weren't very frugal, and they didn't know. They kept thinking that every movie was going to be this enormous hit instead of analyzing why the last 50 weren't.
Right, exactly. And I mean, Superman 4 is a great one because it comes out the same year as this, right? They both come out in 87. And I believe the King Lear movie also came out in 87, the Godard. So it's like they had like these big blockbusters and these art house, like, these movies. And they like you said, like each year, I mean, they probably had a bunch of 1987s, really, when we think about it. It's like kind of this interesting slice here of what they were releasing at that time. But because that was the thing, right? Is that 1987 was trying to pay off all the debts from 86 and 85 and 84. And, had they just kind of stuck with the, that what they talk about in the documentary, where when the scripts come in, one pile is for Chuck Norris, one pile is for Charles Bronson. Yeah. And if they'd stuck with that approach, they probably would have lasted well, because that's kind of what guys like PM and New Image do. Is like later they just go, okay, we're not going to try to get Norman Mailer and make that. No, right.
But I think I watched the Electric Boogaloo, the Wild Untold Story of Canon Films earlier, and I also watched the first half of the Go-Go Boys, which
I haven't seen that one yet. I need to see that
one. Has Menachem Golan and Goran Globus on the actual documentary, along with clips of Jean-Claude Van Damme and stuff. So if you have the both, you kind of get covered. And look, the Go-Go Boys is certainly more complimentary, or at least realistic. Whereas I find Electric Boogaloo unnecessarily harsh. I feel like it, while it does have the occasional moment of celebrating Canon and what they were able to do, I think a lot of the time it's that fucking twat in the hat with the scarf, the portly guy who's just like a sound designer or something. And I'm not disparaging sound designers, but like there's this one twazzock wearing this, like he's got a big gut. Like, I mean, I've got a gut. We've all got a gut. It's fine. Right. But he sits like back here with his gut out like this in a big black long sleeve fucking sweatshirt, like he's doing improv at a black box theater in Chicago in 1978. And then he's got a fucking wispy, pointless, basically like a woman's pashmina type scarf. And look, any gender can wear a scarf. I'm not shit. This is not a gender thing. This is this cunt who was being interviewed for fucking Electric Boogaloo, who only has negative shit to say. You're a sound designer. Design the sound and fuck off. But he only has negative shit to say about these movies that we hold dear and we love. He only has time to shit on them. And there he is wearing a fucking little straw trilby and a wispy fucking thing, and then a black long sleeve I'm a theater kid of the 70s fucking. And I'm just like, whoever this bastard is, get him off my screen. So I don't I don't like it. And then they have that little toad-faced gentleman from MGM who's just like, every movie they gave us was shit. And I'm like, but that's not true. MGM had a long relationship with Canon and were perfectly happy with a lot of the movies they released. Yeah. But he acted like every movie they released was terrible. They also acted like every movie was a flop apart from Breaking. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. All of the Death Wish sequels made money. All of both Breaking movies made money. All of the American Ninja movies made money. All of Chuck's movies made money. So this thing, I understand they want to tell the story of the downfall as quickly as possible. But I'm genuinely surprised by that documentary because I loved Mark Hartley's first two documentaries. I thought they were absolutely invaluable and indispensable. And I think he really dropped the ball on the Canon one. And look, that might have been because he couldn't, like he didn't get Stallone, he didn't get Van Damme, he didn't get some of the bigger names who could have maybe been more reasonable about Canon. Because, and taking it back to Tough Guys Don't Dance, like, it's not just the end result that I enjoy for a myriad of reasons. Yeah. I love the fucking just grumpy old man spirit that went into it. And look, I get it. You could cite them for abuse, maybe not sexual abuse, but certainly like physical or mental or emotional abuse compared to today's workplace, right? And I'm sure Norman Mailer on the best day was a grumpy son of a bitch to be around. I totally understand. But there's something about the artist before the art thing where I'm just like, I kind of want grumpy old fucking dudes making my movies sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, because there is such spirit to the way he wrote the book. And you might be like, well, yeah, he just wrote it for hire because he owed them a thing. Right, but he did something within and I find this making my albums that I sometimes have to rush to put out by a deadline. He wrote something to a deadline and yes, to kind of get out of a contract or whatever, but something happened by going, well, I like pulp novels and I like Provincetown and I like, Ouija boards and ghosts and things or whatever it is. I'm just going to throw everything I like in a movie in a book because I don't want to have to research it or, set it in historical context or whatever. So I'm just going to write about what I know and I'm going to bang it out in 2 months. And then sort of do the same thing with the script because it's not like he was able to sit around for 8 months and polish the damn thing. So, it was a Canon picture. It's made, fast and ready. And yes, okay, I think they were in Provincetown for like 60 days, which seems incredibly long to film a movie where mainly it's just people standing around and talking, but okay.
Right.
Apparently it took 60 days, but it's all filmed around his house. It's all filmed around like local businesses that were perfectly happy to sort of give up of their time and whatever, especially Ryan O'Neal came into the bar and drank later with them. So, it's made scrappily. It's made with the Canon panache of being like, well, let's throw Ryan O'Neal, Isabella Rossellini, and Wings Hauser and Lawrence Tierney and Penn Jillette into a giant blender of Norman Mailer's making and see what shits out at the end. And I think when you get a bunch of weird, scrappy, grumpy, definitely not politically correct, but definitely not necessarily even fully socially sane people, and you just kind of go, okay, you've got 60 days to make this thing. Listen, if you end up making Tough Guys Don't Dance, you're winning at life. That's how I feel.
No, I agree completely. I mean, I think the other thing is that, again, Norman Mailer brings this cachet with him that like everybody was just expecting a masterpiece. And, one of the things is like when the movie started getting bad, receptions, he made it sound like he was creating a parody the whole time, which freaked Canon out. They didn't know what to do with that because they were like, we thought they were packaging this, like you said, they were packaging it as this is the masterpiece. This is like the indie art house movie that's going with Superman. Right. And they thought they had like two big winners that they were packaging, and then Superman 4 ends up being a dud. And this, to your point too about the documentary, this would have been the perfect movie to discuss in the documentary because, to your point about it kind of being slanting more negative, I mean, they interviewed Albert Pyun, who did not have a good relationship with Canon. Dolph Lundgren, the only movie he made with them was Masters of the Universe. And, pretty much all Dolph says in the interview, or, for his interviews, man, I knew something was bad from the moment I got on the set. And it's like, that's what you get there. So this is like the kind of movie that I think is probably the most fascinating kind of movie, and it's completely absent from the film. I mean, they talk about King Lear a little bit. They talk about the Cassavetes film a little bit, not much. But I would have been really curious to know more about how that kind of thing works, because I almost think too that because Golan Globus, they were from Israel, and it seemed like a lot of things got lost in translation. That's how we ended up with like Lemon Popsicle, or what was that? The Last American Virgin? Is
the American version of it.
Of Lemon Popsicle, and it doesn't really like.
Well, the problem with that is they made it like shot for shot, and there was just some things culturally that, and I'm surprised none of the actors in the movie, all of whom were American actors, didn't turn around and go, "We don't call it this in high school," or "We don't bring that on." Oh, there's the oranges again. He brings oranges and a Christmas tree to her when she's in the hospital. And I told you, the oranges come in somewhere, dude. Like, there's an orange thing to do with Christmas. There's like an orange goblin or something, probably. That's probably what the dwarfs are trying to ward off in Sweden, is that if you parade the dwarfs, it warns off the orange goblin who's going to come stick cloves in your asshole or something, while Krampus sodomizes your donkey or something. Anyway,
Well, no, but I wonder if something got lost in translation too, because, like when I used to teach English as a second language, I remember one of my students one time was talking about what she did as a child. And she said, I used to go outside and play with myself. And I said, no, you used to go outside and play by yourself is what you, she was like, well, didn't I just say that? And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you what the first thing was because she was from Saudi Arabia. So we were going to, that wasn't a good conversation.
Right.
Go
there, no.
No. So I had to explain to her, but it's almost like, Golden Globe, Nora Mailer said to Golden Globes, yeah, I'm just going to play with myself here. And they thought, oh, he's going to play by himself, and realized like, no, he's playing with himself.
No, but again, there's a part of me that, and look, this is with hindsight, right? I have no skin in the game whether this movie is popular or not. I don't care. But there's a part of me that with hindsight, because you have this incredibly mad moment in pop culture history where you could get two gentlemen from Israel come over to America and just be like, now we make American movies. And everyone's just like, all right, sure. What do you want? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, because you could finally have a situation where that would happen. And they played enough cinema and distribution company monopoly that they were able to buy like big buildings and take over the Cannes Film Festival and do various mad publicity stunts. Right. There's I don't know, there's something, Evel Knievel or the guy who, tightrope walked between the World Trade Center buildings. Yeah. There's just something glorious about two madmen flaming out in quite such a spectacular way. And I think that, when we look at Tough Guys Don't Dance, I think it's so easy to disparage a movie like this or decry a movie like this or even ignore a movie like this. And yet, for my way of thinking, these interesting experiments, because that's what it is, it's an experiment, are entirely the kind of movies there aren't enough of. And when you find one of them, I don't know about you, but it's like, it's lovely to go snorkeling or deep sea diving and see all the beautiful fishes, but it's when you go into under the rocks in the middle of the ocean and come across some bizarre fucking fish you've never seen with the glow up eyes that come out of the top of the head and it's shooting lightning out of its butt and it's got seemingly 15 nipples and 17 fins. You suddenly go, oh, that's the one I'm going to remember and tell people about, but I'm not going to catch it. I'm going to keep that one free. You know what I mean? And it's there's something about Tough Guys Don't Dance that I feel that way about it.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And I also, one of the things I love about the fact that it's from 1987 and not today, I think if this movie was made today, it would have flamed out in the theater just like it did in 1987. But then it would have gotten this like second life on like Netflix or something where like younger people would have watched it ironically and like enjoyed it in this kind of separate way. And I love that this movie doesn't have either of those things, right?
Right.
That it's not that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I like you said, it's one of those finds, one of those cinematic finds that you're just like, I don't know that this is what cinema was meant for, like what the original, but the fact that we have it is fantastic.
Yeah, and you don't get something like that without a canon or without a, without a Roger Corman or without a Charles Band or without a, Fred Olen Ray. I mean, I don't know, name your B-movie icon of choice,
Right.
Uncle Lloyd Kaufman at Troma, like whoever it is. These people, when you watch something like Electric Boogaloo, and you suddenly start, as they're showing the movies, you go, oh, I rented that. Oh, that movie meant a ton to me. Oh my God, I love that movie. Wait, Cannon made that movie? Oh my God, I need to see that movie. Like, as you're watching the documentary, whenever I see clips from the films, I am never thinking, I don't want to watch that. That looks like a piece of shit. I literally went to Amazon Prime because Amazon now owns MGM. A lot of the Canon movies have ended up on Amazon Prime. Some you still need an MGM Plus subscription for, but that'll go away soon because who's going to maintain that anymore? They'll just incorporate it into Prime. Yeah. But a lot of the Canon movies now are on Amazon Prime. And I literally, as I was watching Electric Boogaloo again today, and I've seen it before, but I started going, I need to see, that's on Prime, great, add that to my list. There was no point, even something like The Apple or something, which is so far a swing and a miss, it's not even funny. Right. But you go, you know what? They thought, how do we launch canon? Oh, I know. We'll make an insane Tommy meets Phantom of the Paradise meets fucking the Bible stories told by two non-native English speakers in the form of sort of a Xanadu style musical. I mean, it's just such a wild, insane swing that if you're not applauding it, then I'm sorry, you've misunderstood life. Like, you know what I mean? Because if every single movie that came out the gate was fucking, I don't know, pick your main popular fucking, like, if every movie that came out was fucking Die Hard or whatever, after about 10 of those movies, I don't mean that plot, but that quality of movie, after about 10, 15, 20 of them, you'd go, all right, I'd like to see something a little scrappy or a little messy or a little weird or a little like, wait, what just happened? Like, I don't know about everyone else, but I think that's why you get these in Hollywood's history, as you sort of go through the sort of genre cycles that Hollywood has gone on, that sometimes last 5 years and sometimes last 30 years. It's why they rise and fall so quickly, is because at a certain point, I love chocolate, but there's only so much chocolate you can eat, and it just doesn't, at a certain point, it's actually the absence of chocolate that makes the chocolate taste good, if that makes any sense at all. I'm not sure if I ballsed up that metaphor, but you know what I'm saying. But let's get into the nitty gritty of Tough Guys Don't Dance, and let's see, between Matt and I, listen, we have literary and creative brains. Let's see if we can break down exactly what happened in Tough Guys Don't Dance. Matt, did you have anything more to say generally about the film before we break it down for people?
No, I don't think so. No,
okay,
I'm ready for the breakdown. Yeah.
Good. Ready for the breakdown. Yes. And then you need one of those, boom, the breakdown. You know what I mean? Like one of those like interstitial station breaks. Boom, the breakdown. The breakdown. So the movie centers around Ryan O'Neal's character, Tim Madden. And he is a schlubby bum of a writer who hasn't written anything in years, but who gets insanely lucky with any woman who so much as breezes past. And coming from a writer who had 6 wives in his life and describes women as floozies in one of the interviews, I can only imagine that this is how Mailer himself imagined his Lothario ways, that even just sitting looking depressed and miserable in a pub, drinking cheap beer, that you would be called over by a former porn star in order to cuckold her husband, who is unenthusiastically and weirdly awkwardly touching her knee. That's the kind of thing that happens in this movie. Anyway, Ryan O'Neal wakes up with a massive hangover and to find out that his wife's been gone for 22 days. He's been writing 22 in shaving foam on the mirror. His wife's been gone for 22 days, and his dad is downstairs in the kitchen, and he looks all roughed up and has clearly had a night of it, and no one quite knows what's gone on. And he sits down to start talking through the last month or so with his dad of sort of what led to this turn of events. So he sort of has that, Sunset Boulevard thing where, like, the guy's, not that Ryan O'Neal's dead at the beginning of the movie, but that, there's a wraparound kind of device. So sort of, I think it's around the third act that we start coming back into present day, and then the story with him and his dad kind of continues from there. But the whole second half of the first act and the whole of the second act is basically flashback. And in this flashback, we learn about, lots of things, but mainly kind of insane drug-fueled sexual escapades. So what happens as soon as so we don't know what's happened. His wife's been missing for 22 days. He's talking to his dad. What's the next thing we need to pay attention to, right? It's that his ex-wife was holding a lot of parties. Is that what it was?
Right, exactly. And Wings Hauser happens to appear as the police chief, just happens to appear at one of those parties.
Well, he's the acting police chief.
Acting police chief, that's right, yeah.
So he's not even the police chief.
Right.
We never meet the police chief. or anyone or why he's acting and not just the police chief. But he's the acting police chief. But boy, is he acting. I mean, Wings Hauser is acting. If you are sat in the nosebleeds at Yankee Stadium and this is on a small 20-inch CRT screen down on in the dugout, you can still see Wings Hauser acting. You know what I'm saying? And it's glorious. It's glorious. There's no knocking of Hauser in this movie. Yeah. He owns this. He saddles this bitch up and rides it into the sunset. He is glorious in this movie. Everything.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, just seeing him act opposite Ryan O'Neal is just a thing where they're both like drinking whiskey and giving each other a hard time. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. Ryan O'Neal's a really interesting actor because I think when in the right role, he is like charismatic and dynamic as he has to be. Yeah. But he's also a guy who in his best films is sort of a pathetic asshole. He's sort of always he's not like down on his luck in a cool Bogart slinging a shot of whiskey in the corner of a downtown bar at 2 a.m. with some jazz on the jukebox. Right. He's not that guy. He is the guy in a lonely New England pub in the middle of the winter, sipping on a cheap lager in a denim Canadian tuxedo, saying things like, "That's because you trusted a man," to porn stars who come in with their effeminate, cuckolded husbands. That scene clearly left an indelible mark on me because I keep bringing it up. But no, it's an interesting energy because most people, leads or protagonists in movies like this, while yes, there probably are going to be kind of timid everymen thrown into the tumult of this sort of murder sex mystery that's going on, or sex murder mystery, either which way I don't know which way you like it. I like a bit of sex with my murder, but I also like a bit of murder with my sex, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. So no, but he normally your protagonist he'd be he might be pathetic, but he would be pathetic in a sort of cool, maybe sort of crumpled way. Yeah. Ryan O'Neal is, and listen, Lawrence Tierney says it, I had to do it because you got no balls at one point in the movie. So it's not like the character's not meant to be a bit of a spineless goon. Yeah. But Ryan O'Neal, for whatever reason, you would think sort of the big, blonde, red-faced Irish kind of actor that, he would be more John Wayne-like, or at least have the, from the sort of troubled ego that you've heard O'Neal can have on set. Yeah. Not on this one, apparently. On this one, he was lovely. But on other films, he has got a bit of a Deborah Winger-style reputation. Rightly or wrongly, I don't know. There's been a lot of, reevaluation of these histories of Winger and O'Neal and Sean Young and other people who had reputations, but he does have that reputation, and yet instead of being having the sort of bravado and ego of a Wings Hauser, and look, Hauser earns it. I'm not, again, that's not a slight on Hauser. If I'm Wings Hauser, I'm fucking Wings fucking Hauser. You know what I mean? Yes. I am both barrels Hauser, and there's not a goddamn thing that you're going to tell me to do that I won't be knocking out of the park. But if you're Ryan O'Neal, there's a certain weird respect I have for him, that he's so willing to play sort of chumps a little bit. Yeah. I mean, even though he's a chump that every single woman who looks at him, drops her pants within 30 seconds. I understand that he's still Ryan O'Neal, right?
Right.
But he plays such, quivering jellies most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think in this case, it was Norma Mailer. Okay, Norma Mailer wants me to play this part. I'll play the part. Now, it's funny. You mentioned that he said he was, he was good on this set, or he's friends with him. the kind of the scene that this movie is most infamous for, which we'll get into in a little bit. Apparently, Mailer like saw that as a betrayal. That Mailer, Ryan O'Neal saw it as a betrayal that Mailer left that scene in the film.
Oh yes, no. After the fact, Ryan O'Neal
yeah.
was not happy with the picture. No, I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Oh God. Oh man.
Yeah,
Oh God.
yeah.
But again, it's funny. Wingshauser says in his interview, and Norman Mailer says in his interview, like, those lines are the hardest lines to deliver.
Right.
Especially when you've got Mailer on a camera whizzing 360 around you, right? And I'm sorry, if David Lynch had made this movie, everyone would be fucking creaming their jeans over it and saying how fucking wild and weird and intentional and whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this influenced David Lynch, and I will not hear. This influenced Twin Peaks like you wouldn't believe, and it's not just because Angelo Badalamenti did the score, although there is a sort of a very obvious, not synth score like he does for Twin Peaks, but it's still very Badalamenti. Like you know, he kind of paints the whole movie with you know, there's something that swings between his later Lynch work and something earlier by like a Goblin. Like if you watch like Deep Red and then you think that Goblin do the score for, and then you think of sort of the breathy, eerie, pulsing soundtrack that Badalamenti does over the supposed ghost scenes, or the scenes where maybe the ghosts are or the spirits are out and about in the house. There is a corollary there, you know, a corollary. Am I saying that wrong? All right, I don't know how I'm saying it. Whatever. Corollary. Stop
Corollary?
trying to use corollary. I don't know what the word is. There's a cauliflower between the music that Goblin did for Deep Red, or their oeuvre, the music that Badalamenti would do later, and the music here. I think it's a very influential movie, and I think that if another filmmaker made this, or Cannon hadn't released it, or, you know, it wasn't Ryan O'Neal, it was someone else, or, you know, it was, if this was Carl McLachlan and Isabella Rossellini and Wingshauser, and it was directed by David Lynch, but otherwise it was exactly the same movie, the oh man, oh God, oh man, oh God scene would be heralded as this great parody soap opera weirdo gonzo masterpiece. But because it's Norman Mailer and Ryan O'Neal in a Cannon movie, people have turned it into a meme. And look, is it ridiculous? Yes, of course it's ridiculous. But it's ridiculous when anyone in a movie goes, no! Because I don't know if you've ever been in life before, but like when shit happens in life, you don't stop what you're doing, drop all of your cutlery and go, no! And like get down on your knees and scream at the heavens. Right. Like you don't do that. Most of the time when you go into shock, you go into shock. Like most of the time your body goes, we're going to shut you down a little bit so you have time to absorb this. And then even if later you scream or cry or get angry or whatever it is, it's not immediate. So these sort of phony scenes where people go, oh my God, no, what, and kind of scream at these are silly anyway. So to suddenly like point to this scene, which, all right, yes, it's filmed a little operatically, but I think that only lends to the credence that Mailer meant it to be overblown and meant it to be parodic at that point in the movie. And Wingshauser's take on it is like, look, that shit is difficult to do at the best of times. And, you know, it was already cold. He's out on a rocky outcrop. The camera's whizzing around him. Mailer's shouting at him or whatever. And Mailer keeps saying, like, go bigger and go bigger and go bigger. And this is what he did because that's what he was told to do by the director. And that was the situation he was in. And Wings, like, perfectly respects the performance and thinks Ryan O'Neal's amazing in it. If it's good enough for Wings, man, it's good enough for me.
Well, because I think, you know, to Wings' point, he probably also feels like Mailer should have cut it, you know, like don't keep it in there. But Mailer sees something in it that gives it this frenetic energy that the film has, right. Which I can understand that O'Neal would feel betrayed because he didn't nail the take, that he feels like he looks silly doing it. But I also see Mailer's point that it just adds to this overall feel of the film that, yes, younger people, ironically, are going to make a meme out of it. But it's if you enjoy this kind of movie, if you enjoy this movie, it fits perfectly, like plop down in there. And like you said, if David Lynch does this, people are reading into it like 5 different ways that he's trying to make it work.
If David Lynch does this, someone's already masturbated 8 times and drawn like a Jesus face in their ejaculate and then written a 20-page blog about it. If fucking David Lynch does it. Or, if fucking Christopher Nolan does something like that or whatever. People are just fucking falling over themselves to, if Hack Snyder had put this in Batman versus Superman, everybody like, oh my God, yes, release the Snyder cut of O'Neill doing oh man, oh God, like 40 times. You know what I mean? Right. We would have all lost pairs of pants to the rabid amount of orgasms that nerds online would be having about this scene if David Lynch or Hack Snyder or Christopher Nolan does it. Because it's Norman Mailer, it's Rowan O'Neill, and it's in a movie that we're meant to ironically watch, according to I don't know who, the online movie Nazis. I have no idea. Well, I reject that. Am I going to say that it's the greatest performance ever? No, of course not. No. Am I going to say that maybe Mailer looked at it and went, let's leave it in, it's kind of funny, and he has like a kind of sick or twisted sense of humor? Sure, whatever. I think that within the dreamlike soap opera meets 40s pulp noir that he is telling, it fits fine. Yeah. As I said, if it had a big Hollywood orchestral score behind it and was in black and white, I can spit and hit a scene like that in a film noir even with performances by Bogart or Cagney or any of them in quite the same vein. So if you're not versed in cinema, yes, it stands out like a sore thumb. If you are, there's scenes like that, and another one I'd love to call out that's a very kind of deliberate camera move, but also some glorious deliberate lighting. And that is after the first scene of O'Neill and Hauser in the basement office that he is occupying, where they are gloriously like overlit. But they're lit where sort of there is this like shadow up underneath them and then light coming down on them. And it's very contrasted. It's not, they've made very little attempt to light the rest of their face. It's a very intentional thing. And at the end of the scene, Hauser like stands up and does this like ridiculous sip of his whiskey and then wipes his mouth off. And as he does, in this sort of quite kind of Terry Gilliam-esque kind of shot, it rolls all the way back, the dollies all the way back to the back of the office. And the office then is lined with these like Brazil-like filing cabinets or Orwellian-style filing cabinets with this big looming underlit Hauser at the front. It's a glorious scene. But again, it's a scene that is very purposefully cinematic. It's going... It's Mailer going, I've always wanted to do one of these scenes. Let me do one of these scenes. You know what I mean? And and I kind of love that. It's sort of student filmmaking, but with a budget.
Right. It's the kind of thing that, like, if Scorsese did it in a movie, it would either be considered like genius and the greatest thing that he could have ever done, or considered like how Scorsese's fallen off and he's not a great director anymore. Right. and you could have, even in the same movie, critics could watch that same scene and have different opinions on it to that, a stark a degree. And I think it's the same thing with this movie. It's like, people see Mailer do it and go, like, just get over yourself. You think you're a big director or whatever. But it adds to the kind of the fun of this movie and the entertaining quality of this movie, of this just sort of Mailer, like you said, just being like, I want to do that. I want to try that. I want to see what that looks like and do it. And then when he sees it, just keeps it in. Yeah. But it really is one of those things with movies. I know it makes for boring podcast conversation to say movies are subjective and, opinions are subjective. Kind of. But I think just the way people describe movies, I've been beginning to see it more and more. That like it's kind of like the perfect example of the kind of scene that you could just see so many varying opinions on. That there's not really going to be a mean that clusters around a scene like that. It's not going to be, you either love that or you hate it, and it's either the reason a director's fallen off or the director's still got their fastball.
Yeah, I mean, on the back of the Blu-ray, they've got some old reviews. And ironically, it says critics are raving, but it says bold, innovative, wonderful, and then the next critic says stinks. Then another one says giant death orgy with lots of maniacs. Then another one says one of the worst ever. My grandmother could do better. And then someone says excellent, crazy entertainment, very funny. And another one says gross, sleazy garbage. So it's one of those things where this is a movie that will divide, and I'm okay with that, and I'm okay having picked a side quite happily of being in the side of people who love it. So we flash back to Ryan O'Neal sitting loosely in a redecorated Mailer's house. And what's hilarious about this is Mailer, because he was using his own property for the film, got Cannon to pay for a remodel of his house. And much to his wife's annoyance and chagrin, he painted it like these pastels that we were talking about, because he wanted everything to have this sort of dreamy 50s pastel quality to it. Either that or he'd just been watching a lot of Miami Vice. And his wife was like, you'll be changing that back, right? And he was like, oh, fuck it, whatever. And no, he never changed it back for like years and years and years and years. I think it was like 10 years after the movie that his wife was like, right, but paint the fucking house white again. But yeah, so anyway, you go to this party scene, and this party scene is fantastic because he's just recruited a bunch of drunks from down the local pub. And from everything I've understood about Provincetown is it's this weird sort of artistic cross-section where, everyone from like Atlantic-based fishermen, very hardy kind of rural people, mingle with bikers and cross-dressers and LGBTQIA people and artists and hippies and weirdos and sex perverts. Apparently, that's who resides in Provincetown. And so we cut to this party, and this party is, I don't know, you could watch this on repeat. The characters that are in this party, it makes no sense. It's also one of those things where when the movie occasionally slips into like full-blown 1987, while it doesn't work at all, because the rest of the movie should have a like ba-dum, dum, dum kind of soundtrack. It doesn't. It has an Angela Badalamenti soundtrack, but which is equally sort of film noir parody. Anyway, think Twin Peaks or whatever, or those kind of scores that he does for that show. But when it occasionally has a piece of like popular music, it's so jarring, yet it kind of is wonderful. Like the end credits, for example, has like a 80s power ballad, like St. Elmo's Fire style song over it. I'm like, where, anywhere in this movie does this music make sense? Because it doesn't. This movie it has a couple of 80s scenes, but ultimately is out of time. It's about, love triangles and murder and, overzealous police chiefs and drug deals gone bad. Like, it's not, a big 80s John Hughes movie or even a Less Than Zero movie. Yet suddenly we're in the middle of this 1980s party where everyone's dancing around in leather vests and and sailors' caps and weird kind of things. And Wings shows up to basically say, I'm the acting chief of police, and I don't know what's going on around here. And there's like a topless woman walking about, and it's all very Bucknallian. And it doesn't take 30 seconds for the hostess of the party, we find out is Ryan O'Neal's wife, Patty, to come up to Wings and be like, why, you mighty fine, delightful man, come with me and my boobs, and we'll go get, she's doing a big soap opera style Southern Belle accent. And thus this allows Hauser and O'Neal to meet and sip whiskey as the only adults at the party. Everyone else is acting very childish, but these guys are going to sit in the corner, drink whiskey, and commiserate, right?
Right, yeah. And it's like, if I met Wings Hauser, I guess I'm young for him to ask a question like this, but I think if somebody who was born in the 40s or 50s met Wings Hauser and they were drinking, I could see him as actual Wings Hauser, not just his character in the movie, but as Wings Hauser say, hey, were you in Vietnam?
Yeah.
And that person be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you just seem like someone who's in Vietnam, like when he does this in the movie, it's like so Wings Hauser.
Yes. Oh, completely. Because you believe that Hauser has lived every life that we've watched him live on film. You just believe, well, Hauser was in Vietnam, and Hauser was a chief of police at some point, and Hauser, you just believe he was these characters. We'll get to the fact that Hauser's house is decorated with photographs of him, including one of him in Vietnam brandishing a bloody machete at the camera, as if the American news photographer or even the American Army photographer was coming at him, and Wings went, "Oh, I've just beheaded this this Asian fuck. I want you to take a picture. I've just killed this Vietnamese bastard. I want you to take a picture of me and my bloody machete. And then I'm going to take it home and frame that 8x11 and hang it on the wall of my luxury New England house." Along with, that scene where Ryan O'Neal goes to Isabella Rossellini and Wings Hauser's house.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but the camera goes about, it's not a full 360. It kind of does 270 around the three main sides of the room. And in every shot, there is a gun rack behind her. So the room must have like 8 gun racks because the camera goes all the way around. But in the back of every shot is a different gun rack. It's kind of genius. The way they've gone, well, if Wings Hauser lived here, or certainly the incarnation of Wings Hauser we're getting for this picture, he would have definitely a framed 8x11 of him with a machete in Vietnam, having just killed a man. Definitely he would have that. That's definitely a thing he would have. And then he would have lots and lots of gun racks. More guns, by the way, than any... Like, Wings Hauser couldn't carry... Even if he had straps and belts and whatever, he couldn't carry all the guns he has in his house. He has enough for an entire militia just in his living room. God forbid what's in his bedroom.
Exactly. Well, because in the book, when they have this conversation, when Madden goes to see his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend, she is explaining to him through multiple paragraphs and pages about how dangerous her husband is, Wings Hauser's character. And it's almost like Mailer said, okay, how can I take these pages of plot exposition and just put them on the screen for like 30 seconds for you to get the sense of it there.
Yes.
Oh, I've got it. Okay. So, because they actually explained that Mailer's character killed, it was like more than one person that he beheaded in Vietnam with a machete. So it's like, okay, instead of having Isabella Rossellini say that for like multiple minutes of plot exposition, let's just have a picture of Wings Hauser, which I just loved that idea, that energy, just the way that Mailer decided that this is how I'm going to adapt my book to this movie. And these decisions that he's made, they're fantastic.
They are fantastic. They're wonderful. I want that picture of Hauser with a machete framed in my house so badly. So if anyone's listening who can make that happen, please make that happen. There's a people out there who have made, the parody duck referenced movies that are at the beginning of Howard the Duck. Where it's like Howard the Duck, but it's like the Indiana Jones Howard the Duck or whatever.
Oh, right, yes.
I have that Indiana Jones parody poster that someone's managed to scan and print, so I'm sure they can scan and print this Wings Hauser picture. It's on Blu-ray now, so it's at least 1080p, so we should at least be able to get an 8x11. But no, Hauser is fantastic. So it turns out, and actually as I think about it now, what this movie's really about is just that Ryan O'Neal and Wings Hauser have slept with all the same women. Because Hauser is now married to Ryan O'Neal's ex-girlfriend, Isabella Rossellini. Ryan O'Neal and Isabella Rossellini once went on a weird Christian swingers weekend to fuck each other's wives and husbands with, of all people, Penn Jillette and Deborah Stipe, right?
Yeah.
Wings then, through a series of years, loses Isabella Rossellini, but gains Deborah Stipe, who's gone off and married. First of all, married went off and married like a rich guy, right?
Right. So she marries,
and she marries a guy who used to be friends with Ryan O'Neal.
Right. Again, this is all stuff that in the book is covered over like chapters.
Yeah.
That they just kind of throw at you here. But John Bedford Lloyd plays Wardley, this rich guy, who Deborah Stipe marries.
Sort of a Connecticut, Massachusetts fop kind of. He's sort of foppish, floppy head, and bisexual, right?
Right, exactly. And so, and so then she marries him, becomes rich, and then divorces him, and in the divorce, like says, uses Ryan O'Neal, who's like their chauffeur, to essentially to go, to run away. So she marries Ryan O'Neal, but gets a whole bunch of money in the divorce settlement. So that's what they're living off of, is this divorce settlement money.
But she hires him, she forces Wardley to hire him.
Right, exactly.
As
that's right.
A chauffeur, because her whole plan was, I had such a wild weekend of passion with O'Neal.
Right.
That I need to always be with O'Neal, and therefore she went, but she needed money, right? I'm right in this, right? So
exactly.
He went into prison for 3 years because of some drugs or something, right?
He was trying to sell coke, and he got busted selling coke, so he did 3 years in the clink, and then when he got out, he bumps into her, and she's like, "Oh, I've got a rich husband now. Why don't I make you the chauffeur?" And so then he now I don't know if they mention it. Maybe they do at some point that, right, also part of the deal was that she was trying to get Ryan O'Neal to kill her husband, because that way she'd get the entire inheritance, and he just, he's that kind of, like as Lawrence Tierney said, he doesn't have the balls.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing. So, and again, you have to keep this all in perspective, right? So you have, so Ryan O'Neal was going out with Isabella Rossellini. He asked her to do this weird swingers tryst thing. They both came away with it not trusting and not particularly happy with each other, so they went their separate ways. In the meantime, Deborah Stipe, who was so enamored with Ryan O'Neal, has said, I will go off and get rich, then I'll divorce him or whatever, and then we'll get married and blah, 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 blah. In the meantime, Isabella Rossellini meets Wings Hauser and marries him, right?
Yeah.
Wings Hauser is now just happens to become the acting chief of police. We don't know why he's acting. We don't know what's happening. Active chief of police here at Provincetown, right?
Yeah.
Coming to Provincetown one evening is said former porn star, and she makes the point of saying like XXX former porn star,
right?
And her, which is Frances Fisher, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And her, yet again, another sort of effeminate, possibly bisexual, possibly gay, cuckold husband, who they just show up. She's like, "Oh, I said we had to go to the right tip of the pinky finger of Massachusetts," and Lonnie had to agree. Blah, 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 blah. So they then have this, his wife's been gone 22 days or whatever. So he then has this wild night of passion with this other woman, Frances Fisher, in front of Lonnie. They will then both wind up getting murdered. But we also find out before that happens that Wings Hauser was also having an affair with Frances Fisher and Deborah Stipe, right? Wasn't he having an affair with both women?
Right. Yes, exactly. Because in the book, we find out that Wings Hauser's character has an insatiable sexual appetite.
He says it in the movie. He says, I have sex like 5 times a day or something with at least 3 different types of women, whatever it is. And then she calls him Mr. 5-timer because he has to have sex with her 5 times every night or whatever, Well, I mean, and looking at Wings Hauser, you're like, that's entirely who he is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, he's a very sweaty, aggressive lover who is insatiable in his eroticism. Because that's what Wings Hauser screams in this movie.
Exactly. We've all seen Art of Dying. We know what happens with Wings in a sex scene with milk and food and other things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, and it's almost, you feel most sorry for Isabella Rossellini because she is such a sort of a porcelain creature in this movie, such a kind of quiet, soft, but she's been so abused by these 2 fucking men. It's just so irresponsible. Yeah. But there is, so with all this going on, and basically throughout the movie, sort of to cut to the chase, throughout the movie, various people either go missing and or are found having been murdered. And because Ryan O'Neal has blacked out and is still trying to kind of piece together this weird night that he had with Frances Fisher and R. Patrick Sullivan, Lonnie and Jessica, And because when he came to, he found blood in his Jeep and various other things, he's convinced that maybe he had something to do with it. He's trying to work it out with his dad by kind of talking through the whole thing and following the situation. Meanwhile, there are love triangles and recriminations and sex and everything else that's happening between at least Ryan O'Neal, Wings Hauser, and 3 of the main women in the movie. And you never quite know until much later in the movie, are all these people setting him up? Is he part of the setup? Is Wings Hauser somehow setting up the 2 women and him? Or actually, is John Bedford Lloyd setting everybody up? There's also, in the midst of all this craziness, a drug deal that is not a drug deal, but somehow scams Wardley out of $2 million, even though there is no cocaine, even though we know that Ryan O'Neal does do cocaine and has a stash, but he also has a stash of marijuana. So it's quite possible that Ryan O'Neal could in fact be this drug kingpin that they've been trying to find in Provincetown all along, because there's some indication that there's like secret codes that when they meet this person, they've got to say this, and then they're like, oh, you're the cocaine dealer, and we're who you give the money to. And there's all this sort of stuff going on. But that's never fully really explained, and it's never really shown that either Wings, Wardley, or Ryan O'Neal know anything about drug smuggling or drug dealing at all. The only time O'Neal did it, he got arrested. So that's all in the mix. And then there is an answer, there is an ending, and there is an ending that features, let's just say, a giant headless body being put into molten plaster of Paris. Like, that is a weird fucking scene. There's a whole dialogue scene while one of the characters is holding a chain, which is a giant naked female body with its head missing and white, like plaster of Paris or whatever, like white. It's interesting because of what happens in Hologram Man. We'll discuss it later. But this random madness to do with these headless bodies and wrapping them in plaster or whatever it is that's being done. And then there are these 2 local ne'er-do-wells that I think also, they were in on the seance. Yeah. That's the other thing. They were in on the seance that may or may not have unleashed a bunch of dead sailors and hookers who may or may not actually be the puppet masters behind the whole thing. Because the movie also seems to intimate that maybe the only reason there were all these murders and bonking going on is because the spirits have been possessing all of these people all along. And we don't know, right? That's sort of... Did I cover just about everything right there?
Yeah. Because it's interesting. In the book, there is no drug deal. It's a real estate deal that's gone wrong. Yeah. And so a lot of the sort of the convoluted stuff, and also the seance is also, it's more alluded to than it is like this real thing that kind of happens. So it's interesting the way that he, like you said, this plot, it's very convoluted because it's almost like he didn't want to make like a 3-hour epic, which is what I guess his book would have to have been if he had, kind of put it all together. But the decisions of the things that he decided to keep or change and put together, like listening to you go through it all there, it sound you like I don't know how I would feel if I hadn't read the book, because I had the book to be able to lean on certain like parts of the story, but without the book, it really is just kind of this madness. It's all jumbled together.
Yeah, but and although it is told in flashback, and yes, at one point the Ryan O'Neal is Ryan O'Neal in his own flashback, and then he has a flashback about more Ryan O'Neal in the even further past while already in a flashback. Like, that definitely happens. I just don't know if he then goes a third layer. I can't remember if there's like a third layer, because there's so many scenes. It's like a John Landis dream sequence. He keeps getting like woken up, and I'm like, wait, is this the present? Is this the dream? Or is this the flashback?
Yeah.
But despite it being very messy, and I think it's intentionally meant to be a little confusing, because he also believed, along with believing he was making a comedy, he also believed he was making a ghost story. He thinks this is a horror film.
Yeah.
And it's a horror film if you took out all the gore and body horror from a Clive Barker movie, but just kept the they're a ghost behind the wall, pseudo-psychosexual, manipulating people's emotions type thing from like a Hellraiser, or like the religious imagery of a Rawhead Rex, or, the outcast nature of Nightbreed, whatever it is. If you took sort of Clive Barker's essence, but removed all the body horror and all the gore and everything, but just made it about like behind the walls there are other worlds that may be manipulating this one, coupled with just an eerie sense of unease and a fascination with religious psychosexual nonsense, that's how close it gets to being a horror movie, right?
Yeah, and I think the addition of Lawrence Tierney as the dad, who is the one like dumping bodies out in the ocean and having these tough guy conversations with Wings Hauser, just like it kind of adds to that. Like, I don't want to say he's Donald Pleasance from the Halloween movies, but it's like this more, I guess it's like a gruffer version of Donald Pleasance. It's like this wise character.
It could also be looked at as a Dante story, as a seventh circle of hell, especially with the kind of everlasting flashbacks, and the fact that it is, along with a movie like After Hours or whatever, it is another movie about and it takes place over 48 hours rather than over one night, but essentially it's a man is put through the ringer storyline, which, there's any number of those movies. Falling Down is one in its own way, After Hours, things like that. But like Eyes Wide Shut, which is sort of, again, that's another movie that sort of has been reevaluated lately. But this has a very Eyes Wide Shut feel to it, This idea of sort of, you're watching it, but you are watching it once removed. You are not in the story. You are watching it once removed. And there is a sort of dreamlike quality to the storytelling. And it's another thing where, like, people can attack the flashbacks and the structure of this film and the, the first person narrative and the voiceovers and everything like that. But if you think, well, wait, he's making a ghost dream movie or Ghosts in Your Dreams movie, again, he kind of succeeds, because it's disjointed. You never quite know where you are in the narrative. Right. You get caught up at some points, and at other points you're a little confused. Well, that's what I'm like in a dream, especially one of those dreams where you kind of go from room to room to room, like one of those dreams that seems to be progressing, but when you analyze it, when you wake up, you're like, wait, none of those rooms made sense. Right. It definitely, I think, again, he has that vibe to it. So I think that definitely succeeds. And I like the idea that he's sort of like, well, it's a rom-com, it's a parody, it's a film noir, it's a soap opera, it's a ghost story, it's a canon film, it's all of these things and none of the above. And it's got Wings Hauser and Ryan O'Neal, but it's one of those where you have to sort of dial into the wavelength. Yeah. Because if you do watch this too removed and too arch and too knowing and too ironic, I actually think you miss some of the atmosphere it's playing with.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I think you've got to know who Norman Mailer is. You've got to read, and not just Naked and the Dead, because I think that this definitely doesn't feel like one of those Norman Mailer books, but read some of his other stuff, even some of his nonfiction stuff. I think it's a book called Armies of the Night, where he talked about during the Vietnam War, he was protesting, and he essentially the deal was he wanted to get himself arrested during a protest and be out in time to go to a party in New York. Yeah. And he ends up down in like Northern Virginia in a holding cell in a high school where he meets Noam Chomsky and stuff like that. It's a very ridiculous story, but when you read that kind of sensibility of how he took that incident and turned it into a book, that's the kind of wavelength that you're on here. And so you've got to be a fan of Mailer and again, beyond just Naked and the Dead or Execution or something. You've got to be into his overall vibe. Right. And if you are, you'll love a movie like this.
It's like how I feel William Shatner walks that line between people who know his sense of humor and get his very dry, very twisted, very odd Canadian sense of humor, then you think that most of the time that you see Shatner saying something that other people would just be like, what did he say? He's doing it because he thinks it's funny, right? And like genuinely thinks it's funny. Not that he thinks it's malicious, that he genuinely thinks it's funny. And other people look at Shatner and go, he's a fucking asshole. And I feel like this movie is that you either get that it's having fun with itself and with the nature of cinema and the nature of writing and the nature of, because it's also the writer's thing of, well, I'm going to cast myself as the protagonist in this movie where, sure, okay, yes, I get embroiled in a murder plot, but also I have a badass father and every woman we meet wants to jump on my old John Thomas. Even if she's married or I've already ruined her entire emotional core, they still want me. And that's a very writery thing to do.
Yes. Right.
Is essentially cast a clone of yourself because he's kind of playing Mailer, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me that in the interview on the disc, Mailer is also wearing a denim shirt because I think of denim when I think of like Ryan O'Neal in this movie. Right. For some reason, until it gets all blooded, of course, on the seat of his phone. So, overall, I really enjoy it. Standout scenes, as we've talked about, the pub scene with the Massachusetts and that's why you don't trust men, or whatever that line is that he says across the bar. And she gets all giddy and he's weirdly touching it. There's that scene, which is amazing. There's the scene in the acting police chief's office, where Hauser knows more than he's letting on, but he's letting Ryan O'Neal kind of spin a little bit. That's a great scene. As I said, ends with that awesome shot. The whole scene, that scene that is post the orgy night. So they go to this couple. He reads in Screw Magazine, whatever it was.
Yeah, Screw Magazine, yes.
He reads in Screw Magazine that there's a white Christian couple that want to have like a swingers weekend with another white Christian couple. And it's really funny because you see him having sex with Deborah Stipe, and in the background you can hear Isabella Rossellini clearly being incredibly pleasured by Penn Jillette. Thankfully, we don't physically see that, but it's in your mind's eye the whole time, a beardless Penn Jillette pleasuring an Isabella Rossellini, which is just, it's baffling enough that Mailer's able to put that grotesque image in my mind. But that's what's happening. And the very next day, there's this scene in a very kind of Southern Baptist church house, this kind of white church house with this big ominous black cross on the back. And again, sort of in a very weirdly Ken Russell type way. But Penn Jillette has this amazing monologue, the sermon that he's giving, that we know, and even Deborah Stipe in the audience kind of giggly acknowledges, he's talking about the fact that they all just fucked. Right. Like he's talking about like they're fucking. And they even sing a hymn that's like the end of the hymn is he comes, or whatever, right?
Yes.
And so it's a thick with sexual innuendo, that scene. And it's so well written. I was applauding his little innuendos at every turn.
Well, because again, this is the scene that's added strictly for the movie. In the book, Penn Jillette's character is just really tall. I can't remember if he was a chiropractor or an actual doctor, but he's like really tall. And that's kind of the idea, is that because he's really tall, he's well endowed. And so he's ugly, right. But that's why he would be, but there's none of this reverend or church stuff involved at all. And so again, the fact that Norma Mailer's like, okay, how do I convey the orgy in as short a period of time in a way that's as most effective as possible? And he goes, okay, what if I have Penn Jillette be a reverend and do this sermon where he's describing the sex acts? It's, again, just a fascinating idea about, like, this is how I'm going to adapt longer scenes into shorter scenes in my movie in the kind of the zaniest way possible.
Well, it's funny because the next movie we're going to talk about, Hologram Man, has a sequence in it that, because of our hero has now an affinity to like shoot electric light streaks out of his hand, as him and his girlfriend are getting hot and heavy on the couch, it literally cuts to like other electrical objects either being fried or like being turned on. And it's sort of that thing where there's like suddenly a montage that's meant to mean, ejaculation is happening, but it's all done with like electrical items in a the one might find in a kitchen. It's similar to Tough Guys Don't Dance, and I never would have thought there would have been such a connection between the two. But the entire sermon that he gives is not only obviously an indictment of the church, a subtle indictment of the church, but that is a sermon that could be taken as being very holy and talking about the nature of sin and Jesus' relationship to it and all the rest of it. But we know and they know it's about fucking. Yes. And then they're going to sing a song that he's specifically picked so that he can hear the women he just had sex with shout, he comes, in the middle of a church in front of everyone else. And suddenly it gets all Ken Russell up in this bitch. Because Ken, if you don't know, Ken Russell loved to put religious iconography juxtaposed with sex. Yeah. No more so than in Crimes of Passion, of course, with Anthony Perkins and Kathleen Turner. That's a very Ken Russell example of what I'm talking about here. And Norman Mailer plays with it a little bit with this scene. So I love all that. I love all the running around and checking the holes in the field and finding severed heads and then that incredible sequence with him and Turney. I mean, this is where Mailer lets you know that he's in on the joke. There's an entire comedic scene where, because he's just got bodies strewn about this small town. I mean, at the end of this small town, only the guy who runs the pub is gonna be alive. Everyone else is fucking dead. Yes. But because he has these bodies strewn around, he has this wonderful scene where Turney and O'Neill are throwing bodies over the edge of their boat in the middle of the dark, just lit by the moon. And it's a beautiful scene. It's a really fantastically filmed scene. And it's got this wonderful comedic dialogue over the top of it about whether all this excitement is going to cure Turney's cancer, and maybe killing people and disposing of bodies is a cure for cancer or something. Some weird ass dialogue that's happening, but it's a fucking hilarious scene. It's played very obviously for comedy, and it's as bleak and weird and goofy as anything the Coen brothers has ever done. And I adore it. I adore it. Like, those are some of my favorite scenes. What about you, Matt?
Well, so, we talked about one of my favorites is when Wings Hauser and Ryan O'Neal are kind of sitting across from each other after the party's sort of winding down, and they're drinking and they're kind of going after each other. Ryan O'Neal likes a joke, "Oh, keep drinking my liquor." Oh, actually, it's my wife's liquor, And so that was probably one of my first favorite scenes. I just really loved that interplay there.
When she comes down and he says, "What are you doing, lady? You're trying to wake the ghosts of Helltown."
Right. Yes, that's right.
That's such a film noir trying to be like cool but not quite hitting the mark kind of line. What are you doing, lady? Trying to raise the ghosts of Helltown.
Right, exactly. And then that scene in the bar where he meets Francis Fisher and Patrick Sullivan, the couple there. So again, in the book, we find out that that guy's gay, and that he's sort of like using her as a beard / like trying to fit into society kind of thing. And
I think that's mentioned. I think that's revealed later on in the movie.
We get a sense of better. Yeah. The other thing too is that but the way that scene is kind of conveyed in the book and in the movie, it's very similar. Like Frances Fisher, the way she's sort of talking loudly, so that Ryan, to make Ryan O'Neal think like you're in on the conversation, and then he finally does butt in on the conversation and suddenly just starts hanging out with them. And then, like you said, when Lonnie, our Patrick Sullivan's character, when he realizes that the woman that he's with has a thing for Ryan O'Neal, and he'll like grab her knee and stuff like that to try to be like, "Oh no, I'm her husband, I'm here with her." And Ryan O'Neal just doesn't care, but his character just doesn't care. It's not even that he's not buying it, or he's just ignoring it altogether, and he's just interacting with Frances Fisher.
Yeah, he's the one who suggests.
Yeah,
like it's a weird night tonight or whatever. He's like, "I could fuck your wife with you watching," or whatever.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like that's and he does. He just does. And it's one of the most disturbing sequences because it cuts from. Well, what's weird is it starts inside, right? They're making out in the chair or whatever and stuff, and she goes down on him or whatever, right? In the living room. somehow that moves outside.
Right. Yes.
And I don't know why. And somehow they're just, it's not like they're up against the wall or whatever. They're just stood upright. She's straddling him.
Yeah.
And I understand that is physically possible. But also, if you have chairs, beds, living room furniture, walls, all of that is a lot easier. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to cuckold some, bisexual gentleman on a living room rug even than it is to just suddenly be upright. But it pans over to his car, and I suppose this is all to try and tie in weirdly. This is sort of movie logic to tie in weirdly with the body being discovered and blah 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 later on. But pans over to the car, and poor old Lonnie is not, like, he's not happy. He's like crying, and is he saying like, please stop it, or please listen to me, or please something?
Yeah, something
it's
like that.
So sad. It's so sad. It's devastating. I mean, Ryan O'Neal's not like a good guy. I mean, I know he ultimately turns out not to be the killer, but ultimately he's not a good guy. And I think that and then ultimately sort of the movie ends up being about the I think the sadness of, chasing the passion of love, but not having any interest in sustaining it once a relate, because ultimately Ryan O'Neal gets exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And you feel like, and I know they try and make it because of the ghosts and whatever, but if we sort of take the ghosts out of it, because I don't know how much the ghosts influencing people really, it's more, the ghosts in this movie are more like the voodoo is in Angel Heart. Yeah. Ultimately, Angel Heart is not about the voodoo, but it's sort of peppered throughout just to give it that kind of swampy southern feeling. And similarly, the ghosts here are to kind of give the town of Provincetown sort of a misty, eerie, dead sailors, dead hookers kind of vibe. Yeah. It's not really a plot point. I'm sorry, Mela, I can't believe that you think that the ghosts are throughout this film, because they're not. They're in some key scenes. Right. They do unleash them, in the seance scene. And, there are a couple of scenes in the house where you see O'Neal kind of walking around. You can hear, it's not quite, kill, mama, but there's like spooky, breathy, sort of ghostly synth pop happening in the background, Badalamenti score happening in the background. And, so it's effective to kind of create an atmosphere, but I can't call it a plot point. But there is this wonderful sequence at the end, which I really think drives this home. The whole movie, he's been pining for Isabella Rossellini. It's clearly what he's thinking about in his heart, because when he gets blitz drunk and is taken to some rat-faced ne'er-do-well tattoo artist in the middle of the boondocks, he gets him to tattoo Madeleine, which is Isabella's name, on his arm. So clearly she is his supposed soulmate, despite him, finding orgasms in the arms of Deborah Stipe and Francis Fisher. Madeleine is clearly what he has his heart set on. But much like him and Deborah Stipe's explosive, passionate relationship that ultimately leads to him being disenchanted with her flighty ways, which is sort of a good observation. It's one of those things, the thing I fell in love with is the thing that's going to kill this marriage. You know what I mean? Yeah. The flighty, passionate, open to anything, throws big parties, drinks, does coke, is experimental, blah, 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 blah. That is ultimately the thing that I fell for, is ultimately the thing that's going to be destroying the marriage. And then there's some implication that even though he ends up with Rossellini, apparently this woman he's always pined for and wished that he hadn't destroyed in the way that he did back when they were younger, there's some implication that he's not happy with that either. And that actually when he shuts the door at the very end of the movie, while she is skipping around like a pixie in the background and draping herself over the furniture, he has this very sort of wet, dead-eyed look of fatalism on his face. And then he shuts the door with the implication that the ghosts are still trapped inside there with him. Yeah. And whether that's the ghosts of his up and down relationship with his family, whether it's the ghosts of previous relationships or whether it's actual scary ghosts, we don't know. Or if it's the ghosts of the dead people that he may not have murdered but may have been partly responsible for their deaths because he was part of the story, kind of thing. The idea that he is a haunted man at the end of the movie is sort of nailed very definitively to the wall, but I think also done in an artistic, sweet, weird way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, it's in the book, the main character is more of a protagonist, and you're just sort of letting the story fall out, and it follows more of your classic film noir. Like, can you imagine being in this guy's shoes? And like, there's that scene, for example, where he steals the machete out of the back of Wings Hauser's car. The squad car. And in the book, that scene is so tense because the way he builds it up, it's almost like this out-of-body experience that the character has when he goes through it. In the movie, it's just like boom, boom, boom. He just does it, and that's it. And in a way, it's almost like you're kind of divorced from that film noir sense of like, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the protagonist and imagining myself having to go through this, or he's like the anchor. There is no anchor. You can't. No. There's no.
You're abundantly aware the whole time that you're watching a movie.
Yes, exactly.
But you are okay with that.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And there is no like relating to Ryan O'Neal's character. He's not, but I think that's also kind of a fun idea that Mailer does here. That it's, and I don't know.
There's some conversations maybe about the sexual politics or relationship politics, or the behavior of a narcissistic but ultimately hopeless man that I think you wouldn't want to see yourself in, but you could recognize maybe. Yeah. Maybe not you yourself, but you could recognize that behavior from real life. I don't think that while the female relationships in this movie and the sexual relationships in this movie feel very overblown, cinematic, and that would never happen. I think there's like a waft of realism to it as well, because it's so weird that you kind of go, well, I don't know. I've had a few rough nights in university that may or may not have ended up in a weird scenario that you kind of look back on and go, did that really happen? You know what I mean? Right. I think there's some of that in there, maybe.
Yeah, but Ryan O'Neal is so Ryan O'Neal that...
Oh, yes, he's Ryan O'Neal to the power of Neil. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like, I can't imagine, but you're right. Like, there is a little bit of like the kind of the Foggy Haze thing, but it's so Ryan O'Neal that it's like, it's hard for me to be like, oh, I'm a Ryan O'Neal-esque, And again, the character in the book is like 37. And I mean, Ryan O'Neal, he was born in 41, so he's like in his late 40s. He's about good 10 to 15 years older than the character in the book. And that also kind of changes things a bit because, again, Deborah Stipe, she's younger. And so I think the main character is probably closer to Deborah Stipe. They were kind of the same age in the book more. Whereas in this, Ryan O'Neal's like an older guy dating this younger woman. And all of it creates a unique kind of feel to the movie. But it's one of those things where it's almost like, oh, I can get Ryan O'Neal. I'm going to have him play the lead, even if he's too older.
I think although he is in his 40s, I think he, especially considering the character's meant to be like ravaged by booze and drugs, right. I think that he plays maybe like 40, 41, 42 maybe. Yeah. So he's not so... I think he's playing it like early 40s, late 30s, and I can almost buy that. And it's not like Deborah Stipe... Like, Deborah Stipe looks like a woman. She doesn't look like a teenager or a whatever. No. Like, she looks like a fully... What I mean is, when you see them next to each other, it's not a older predator type relationship.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
If anything, she has the balls, not him.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a good point too. Yeah. I mean, one other quick thing too about this. So I mentioned that movie that book Armies of the Night. He won the Pulitzer for that. I'd forgotten that. And he won the Razzie as director for this movie. So he's the only person that has that distinction of winning a Pulitzer and a Razzie. Now, I don't think he did like Halle Berry when she won the Razzie for Catwoman and she brought her Monsters Ball Oscar to the podium when she accepted the award. I almost think in Mailer's case, I don't know how he responded winning a Razzie, but I almost kind of think in his case, it probably was more like he probably was more accepting of it or thought it was
Right.
more fun, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, we live in a world where no one will ever give Wings Hauser an acting award.
Right.
And that right there is reason enough to cast all acting awards into suspicion. You know what I mean? There's Donald Pleasance doesn't have an Oscar. And again, I'm not just saying this because I'm fans of their acting. I'm saying this because they are phenomenally talented, yet wildly different actors that if we just continue to award the same old stuff, then, you know, what are we doing here? It's again, it's like I think we've done the comparison, but like it's the modern comparison is Nicolas Cage. And there are either people who watch Nicolas Cage because Nicolas Cage does a wild bit in this movie and I want some wild Cage to happen. A lot of people are just sitting around being like, oh, isn't it funny when he shouts a lion, right? There's those people, and whatever, go with love. It's fine, whatever. If that's your bag, baby, watch Nick Cage stuff ironically. But I like to watch Nick Cage stuff and kind of like see what he was going for. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know whether it was with you that I was talking about like Longlegs and Arcadian, but those I haven't seen those yet, yeah. Those two movies came out this year, or last year rather, and couldn't be more different. And my feeling was that in Longlegs, he swung and missed and derailed the movie, and it should have just been someone else. Because I think there was a better movie in there, and I think he kind of somewhat spoiled it. Although there is a certain detached, ironic joy about watching Cage do a sort of weird Johnny Depp, Michael Jackson style performance, while also trying to be Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs and everything else. Anyway, there's that, and then there's Arcadian, where he plays it absolutely straight, but I think gives an emotional, powerful performance in a way that only someone who swings and misses, but also sometimes swings and hits, can achieve. And I think there's an emotional depth to a performance in Arcadian that I have not seen, even amongst the DiCaprios or whatever of the world who are supposed to be the new De Niros. I don't see it in the same way that I see it in Nick Cage, or I see it in a performance by someone like Wings Hauser. I truly believe that. And people can call me daft, call me stupid, but like, you know, I think John Candy is a much better actor than, I don't know, Harvey Keitel. I really do. I think he's a much better actor than Harvey Keitel, because Harvey Keitel could never play Harry Crumb. He just couldn't. No. But you're never going to give John Candy, no one ever gave John Candy an Oscar. So immediately it calls into question acting Oscars or acting Golden Globes or acting anything. That's why I'm not doing it anymore.
No, you make a great point, because I mean, Nicolas Cage, obviously, I mean, he did win the Oscar, which, I mean, it's one of my favorite performances, you know, Leaving Las Vegas.
Leaving Las Vegas, right. Yes, no, he did. No, and I was more comparing him for his wild tonal shifts than I was for his awards. But yes.
But I do with Nicolas Cage, he's one that I love. I just love watching him and stuff. And like you said, I love seeing him take swings, and whether he takes the swings and misses or he hits. With the direct-to-video stuff, you get these really fascinating ones. Like there's this movie Frozen Ground he did with John Cusack.
I love that one. Yeah.
That interrogation scene with the two of them. It's the kind of thing that in the 90s, it would have been the kind of thing that would have been a TNT new classic that we would have been seeing over and over again. But because it's a 2000s or 2010s DTV movie, it's nobody talks about it. Nobody, thinks about these two. But yeah, I mean, Nicolas Cage. I mean, Pig is another one that is just like I just love it. Yeah, I that movie just and so Nicolas Cage is someone that I always love, but it's not an ironic love of Nicolas Cage. I mean, I love Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. That's one of my favorite comic book movies, and I don't love it ironically. I enjoy watching that movie, and a big part of it is because of Nicolas Cage.
I like that Ghost one. Pay the Ghost or whatever when his son goes missing.
Yeah.
I like that one. As I said, I loved Arcadian. Thought Longlegs was great, but wasn't sure about Cage in it. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was like a good, fun romp. It wasn't quite the celebration of Cage that I wanted it to be. I don't think they necessarily had the budget in the way that they wanted to. But it had some nice stuff in it. I think Cage has been doing some great stuff. And I think that the more that I explore, these actors like Michael Moriarty or Wings Hauser or Donald Pleasance or Kurt Russell, these kind of very definitive actors who have bodies of work that I'm still working my way through and still discovering films in, it's a joy, and it's all I can do to recommend it to others. All right, so here's a commercial break. Just deal with it, fast forward it, listen to it. I don't know. I don't care. We don't endorse any of these things. But if you don't want to hear these ads, you can always subscribe on Patreon for as low as $1 an episode. Patreon.com, patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Go subscribe on there and never have to hear adverts again. Thanks. Bye. Well, that was the wonderful Tough Guys Don't Dance, and I'm sorry if people tuned in to listen to us rip on it, but I feel like we both got some joy from it, actually.
Yes. This happens a lot. I remember this movie called Altitude, that Dolph Lundgren movie that I did with Mitch from the Video Vacuum. We talked about it, and I think everybody was looking for us to kill it. And the comments we were getting were like, I don't know if we saw the same movie. And I'm like, well, we had fun time with it. It was it's kind of one of those deals.
I also don't want to be accused of kind of getting serious as I get older either. But
right.
So I want to clarify, like, I know it's not a great movie, but I loved it for what it is. And is it funny? Yes, it's fucking hilarious.
Right.
But is it funny in I am better than it ironic way? Or is it funny because they were genuinely trying to make a weird, funny movie? I think the second one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, sometimes, I think this is the thing, it was kind of, people were going back and forth about movies like Madam Web and stuff. And I think sometimes you just have to have
of comic book movies, but yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to have a good time. Like, if you enjoy yourself with the movie, sometimes that's all that counts. And I don't think we think about that enough. I mean, I just recently saw that Nosferatu movie in the theater, and that was it was good. It was I didn't hate it. But if you're doing the Pepsi challenge, like which I would rather spend, because it's roughly the same length as Tough Guys Don't Dance. They're both about 2 hours.
Right.
I think if you're going to ask me my druthers on which I'd rather see in the theater, and go through the whole process of like buying the ticket, going to the all that. Tough Guys Don't Dance is probably more my speed. That's more of what I would.
100%. And yeah. It's funny because there were 3 blockbusters released last year that I unabashedly loved in a way that felt very 80s or 90s, in a way where it was like, it's okay to like big tentpole pictures. You don't have to be sniffy about them. And they were all ridiculous in their own way. They were all goofy and silly in their own way. But it was Godzilla times Kong, Frozen Empire. I loved the Ghostbusters, which I think was also Frozen Empire. I think there was like several Frozen Empires this year.
Right.
But Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, I loved that as well. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine, but kind of everyone loved that. So, I mean, and again, I didn't love it because it's a great movie. I loved it because it's a comedy and a gory, sweary comedy at that. We haven't had an R-rated comedy in years. So it was like a breath of fresh air. But the third one was Beetlejuice, which a lot of people shat on, but I've subsequently bought the Blu-ray and watched it a second time, and I loved it just as much. It had Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. They were romping around both Earth and Hell. They were doing, there was a bunch of jokes, bunch of cameos, but like, I don't know what people expected. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like people were like, well, if Burton, who has made nothing but like wank for the last 15 years, right? I don't rate any of his more recent films, but what did they think he was going to do? You know what I mean? Like everyone watched it as if they were like, why is this not some sort of searing dramatic epic? And I'm like, they're like, why is it so confused? Why do none of the characters really have a motivation? I'm like, have you seen the original Beetlejuice?
Right.
Like, do you know what the original one is like? But
Yeah, no,
I loved it unabashedly. So
sometimes I think with the legacy sequels, it's just a matter of like, again, does it sort of tickle that interest in, I mean, I think Axel F was one that
Axel F, another one. It's in my top 10 of the year. Loved it.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to like it, but I was watching the other three Beverly Hills Cop for the podcast, and I thought, okay, I'm going to watch the fourth one, because I usually don't do the legacy sequels just because I just don't, I don't really have any interest in them, but I get why people watch them. But I watched Axel F, and I was like, okay, I had fun with it. So there's parts of it I didn't like. I didn't like parts of the more modern music. I don't need Lil Nas X in my my Axel F movie. But and the fact that it can't be called Beverly Hills Cop 4, it has to be called Axel F. Just like Beetlejuice, it can't be called Beetlejuice 2. It has to be like that whole thing. For one is we can't use numbers for sequels, but it get beyond all that kind of stuff. Again, it's just this thing where you sit in the theater, you sit at home, and you watch it, and it's like, did I enjoy myself for that 2 hours?
And in the lead up to watching it, I watched the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy, and even found peace with the third one. I even found a way to watch the third one, and we've talked about this before, but if you watch it as a Landis film and not as a Beverly Hills Cop film, and you like Landis, and I'm not getting into the whole fucking, well, Landis is problematic because X. Like, fuck off. Are you really willing to throw Animal House and Blues Brothers and American Werewolf of London or whatever? Are you really willing to throw those shit in the fire? No. So shut up. I'm allowed to like fucking other John Landis movies. And Beverly Hills Cop 3 was one where I'm like, oh, this is a Landis. It's a cartoon. It's like, like Landis and Joe Dante are very similar. I'm always going to kind of slightly prefer Dante, but in general, they kind of walk the same path of sort of making everything a little bit like a Warner Brothers cartoon. And Beverly Hills Cop 3 is just the Warner Brothers cartoon version of Beverly Hills Cop. And most people don't want to see that, so I totally fucking get it. But I quite enjoyed it.
Well, because the thing I think that hurts Beverly Hills Cop 3 is that Eddie Murphy didn't really want to make it. Like he wanted to make more serious movies. He was disappointed overall that the first one was such a hit because he thought he was going to be making a serious like action movie, and then he makes it. It's more of a the script and everything. It's more of a comedy. But he wanted to be like known as like a serious actor, and the parts just weren't really working for him as a serious actor, and he had to do Beverly Hills Cop 3. And I guess he came into it. Landis couldn't get the funny out of him, and so it's like it because of that it suffers, I think. But to your point, I also didn't like find myself watching that and going like, God, this is like a waste of an hour and 45 minutes.
Right.
Like I don't, it's not like I think maybe because we watch so many like low budget direct to video things that aren't good, right? That just objectively are bad movies. That when people refer to like big screen movies as bad in that way. And sure, some of them get there. Some of them definitely get there. But I think a lot of times people talk about movies in this way that's like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like what they think of as a bad movie to us is probably something that's just a fun time.
I mean, my thing with the legacy sequels or Ghostbusters or even the things like the American Godzilla and Kong, because I know there's a ton of people out there who are like, well, Godzilla -1 is amazing, but none of the American Godzilla films are any good at all. And I'm like, you're off your fucking nut. The American Godzilla and King Kong movies are, if you've seen any of the 70s or 80s Godzilla, King Kong, Japanese-made, apparently authentic movies, they are every bit as goofy, wild, weird, wonderful, ignoring the human being characters and far more focusing on the monster fights, which is every Godzilla mashup movie, whether it was made in Japan in 1970s with a dude in a suit, or whether it's a big budget American Hollywood movie. And I'm sorry, like, just because you like to go back and watch the Japanese Godzillas, I'm going to presume to kind of laugh, I suppose, at some of the effects, but you're going to watch this one and be all sniffy. I just don't know what to tell you. Like, Godzilla times Kong was a fucking romp. It was a romp from start to finish. It was a fun, stupid, like right down to the, oh, Godzilla hurts his arm. And here's this Bill Murray, Sam Rockwell type played by Dan, I'm going to forget his last name, but he's a British actor. But he's playing very much like if you dropped Bill Murray from Meatballs or Sam Rockwell from the way back into a Godzilla movie. Dan Stevens. That's what Dan Stevens is playing in God. And it's just right down to the fact that Dan Stevens' character has like a massive arm brace already built for Kong. Oh, well, we'll just get that Kong-sized arm brace we have lying around that we built just in case this gigantic ape ever breaks a body part. Like, it's that level stupid, but it's enjoyable because I want to suspend disbelief. I want to believe that Kong is this like benevolent king fighter who's going to help the earth, and that Godzilla's going to team up with him, and that they're going to go and fight big monsters, and that he's going to have a bionic arm and whatever. Like, I love all that shit. Like, it's goofy and weird and stupid. It's why I like the Fast and Furious franchise, because they're not afraid to just be stupid. And sometimes I just want stupid, and it's fine to just want stupid, but it doesn't make it a bad movie. It's like, people have to understand, when I criticize film, and I think a lot of people are like, well, wait, you like the Godzilla movies and the Fast and Furious, but you criticize Zack Snyder. And I'm like, yes, because when Zack Snyder sits down to make a comic book movie, he tries to make it the most serious Christopher Nolan, scratchy head, thinky, blah, 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 while also having, you know, ridiculously graphic sex scenes and little jokes about this and jokes about that and whatever. I'm like, Hack, just pick your lane. If you're making a goofy, fun movie, make a goofy, fun movie. But I'm sorry, in a goofy, fun movie, you don't get to have long, ponderous, you know, barely lit, gray, overly CGI scenes where, like, apparently super important things are happening when really it's just a bunch of people running around in tights. Like, you just, it's the reason why I attack someone like Zack Snyder is because he fundamentally doesn't know how to make a good movie. He just doesn't. He doesn't know how to begin a story. He doesn't know how to end a story. He doesn't know how to tell a story. He doesn't know why characters do what characters are meant to be doing. He changes characters so that they do stuff just to fit his ridiculous ideas about stuff. He doesn't understand any of the characters in the Justice League or why they are beloved for the reasons that they're beloved. He just doesn't. And while his movie you might claim has all the substance in the world, and Deadpool and Wolverine has zero substance, Deadpool and Wolverine is a better comic book movie that's more true to the comic books and more true to the general bizarre lore that pervades all of Marvel's literature than the Justice League is to DC stuff. And this eradication of a sense of humor from like what are literally comic book movies is, you know, baffling to me. And the Nolans and the Zack Snyders of the world, I will attack because Christopher Nolan, you made a 3-hour plus Batman movie. Just stop it. Just stop it. Nothing happens in that film for hours. Hours and hours and hours. And then you're going to have Tom Hardy walking around talking like Sean Connery. And you're like, what is going on? Like, it's either a comic book movie or it's a 3-hour dirgy, slow-moving piece of nonsense. They cannot... I like filmmakers who can tell a story. And, you know, Tough Guys Don't Dance, as convoluted as that fucking story is, by the end of it, I am satisfied that I know that everything has been tied up.
Yeah. I mean, the only, for Christopher Nolan stuff, probably the best thing that I've seen from him is just not Inception as a movie, but just Joseph Gordon-Levitt in his suit. In Joseph Gordon-Levitt in his suit,
right,
works. You know, or Watanabe. I can't think of it. Ken Watanabe, I think, right, is in that movie. If I have the name right, maybe I probably shouldn't say that. I can't if I'm not remembering it. But I remember everybody was talking about The Dark Knight and like, oh, The Dark Knight is great. It's like best comic book movie ever. You've got to see it. And one of my friends was like, I don't think you're going to like it because I didn't really care for it. And I was like, really? You like everybody else is saying it's the greatest thing ever. You don't think I'm going to like it? He's like, I'll tell you, I watched it. I didn't really care for it. And I watched it and I was like, Yeah, I mean, like I love the performance from Heath Ledger, but the Oscar-winning performance was the year before in Brokeback Mountain, and Hollywood at that time was like, we can't give somebody playing a gay character. We'll do it for Sean Penn later because we like Sean Penn better. But it was kind of like, oh shit.
Yeah, but Sean Penn was playing a real person.
Right, exactly. That's true too. That's good. Yeah, but it was like, oh, we screwed up because now Heath Ledger's dead, and we thought he's going to have this whole career. We could give him an Oscar way down the road. And it's like, okay, because I really think the best supporting actor for that year was Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder. That performance was just ridiculous. Right. But I liked Heath Ledger's performance. I think he did a really amazing job. But that's it.
Yeah, but it's also not. Again, it's odd. And again, everyone loves Heath Ledger out of nowhere. Right. I'm like, right. I bet they can't name more than 2 of his films. Right, but suddenly everyone fucking adores Heath Ledger. And I'm like, not that I disliked Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was absolutely fine. But like him suddenly becoming this like godlike fucking actor because he does a Tom Waits impression and a Jack Skeleton impression for the whole of The Dark Knight. Yeah, is it a fun performance? Sure. Is it a deeply layered, complex, weird, realistic performance? No, not at all. Nor does it need to be because it's Batman and the Joker. But for everyone to suddenly be like, oh my God, did you see what Heath Ledger did? It's like, did you see what Jim Carrey did as the Riddler? Like, what are you talking about? Like, of course, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's like kind of that thing where it's like James Gunn now taking over DC is going to be really interesting because I haven't seen the third Guardians of the Galaxy, but I saw the first 2. Yeah. And the fact that he was able to make fun, engaging movies out of a comic book that in Marvel that was just I remember as a kid when Guardians of the Galaxy was on the shelf, that was like kind of the crap that like would be like left over on the nobody was collecting Guardians of the Galaxy. Nobody wanted that comic. And the fact that he turned it into their one of the probably like after the Iron Man ones, their biggest grossing kind of solo or like non-Avengers movies. Right. It's going to be interesting to see what he does with Superman and what he does with these other characters. I'm really curious to see what happens here.
Yeah, it's like everyone didn't like the Taika Waititi Thor movies. I think they're the best ones. Yeah. Iron Man 3 is my favorite Marvel movie. And everyone's like, what, the one where he's not Iron Man very much? I'm like, yeah, it's my favorite one because he's not Iron Man. He has to be inventive and creative. And there's a storyline. And there's a storyline that talks about the nature of being a superhero. And it actually understands the whole problematic, but also popular reason for superheroes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It actually has wit and intelligence and understanding. And it's filmic in the way that it tells its story. And it peppers its actors with renowned character actors who give great performances in little snippets, and it's a joy to watch, and it's weird and funny and odd, and I love it.
Well, it's also rare for a part 3 to be even halfway decent. Right. Like part 3s in series almost never work. I mean, we were just talking about the Beverly Hills Cop movies. I think that's probably the weakest of the bunch. Godfather 3. I mean, I could go on. Superman 3. Like, they part 3s. I mean, I guess Batman Forever is probably the closest to like a decent part 3 because they were just like, okay, we don't have Tim Burton here. Let's just do the best we can.
I think we're also missing out on Police Academy 3 Back in Training. It's a classic. Yeah, it's a classic. There isn't a bad Police Academy movie until 7. No. There isn't. Yes. Yeah. 6 is there. But the first 5, I'm sorry. Again, people are idiots. The first 5 Police Academy movies are classics. I define one. They are the Fast and Furious franchise of the 80s. They are. Because every episode, every film, the stunts get more ridiculous. So they go from having like, what are they called? The speed bikes, water speed bikes. What are they?
Scooters or the motorcycles? Jet skis, yeah. They
go from having like jet skis to having like hot air balloons and planes. Like every movie, like they go from having cars to jet skis to hot air balloons and planes, and like every single episode gets more and more stunt heavy and more ridiculous. that this scrappy band of ne'er-do-wells would be able to do any of this stuff, but they do. And it's the same with the Fast and Furious franchise, that by the time you get to number 9, you've got them slingshotting around the sun or whatever.
Exactly. Well, and that's a great point. I mean, Fast and the Furious, like that's another one where it's like, oh, part 3, it's kind of dying, right? It's like a bad part 3, and then part 4, like I guess Vin Diesel, he had like other movies mapped out, and they were like, let's just see how you do with part 4 first before we start doing anything else. And I think that was the movie that like he was kind of on the on the border of DTV and continuing to have a big screen career. If number 4 doesn't work out, he's probably doing direct to video stuff. But somebody I didn't even think about who's done some great part 3s actually is Don the Dragon Wilson, which we talked about Blood Fist 3, which beyond the fact that you've got the pedophile who's supposed to be a sympathetic character, everything else in that movie is fantastic, right? Which I think that's quite a besides, but then also Ring of Fire 3, which involves him hanging off of a building, off the top of a hospital, shooting an old man wielding an Uzi and blowing up his helicopter, and then motorcycles driving on the floor of the hospital and having to fight them. Another fit. So Don the Dragon Wilson, if you need a part 3 to work, maybe that's the rule: is bring in Don the Dragon Wilson, and he can. And
you see what you've done there.
Yeah.
You see how you've seamlessly taken us from movies need to be more fun,
right,
to part 3s aren't usually that great, except a part 3 that Don the Dragon Wilson did for PM Entertainment, which leads perfectly into tonight's VHS choice, which is Hologram Man by PM Entertainment. The P of PM Entertainment, Richard Pepin, being at the helm of this sci-fi explosion masterpiece. Matt, talk to us about Hologram Man and when you first saw it and its place for you in the PM pantheon.
So this is actually my number 4 PM film. So I've got this behind Zero Tolerance, the Sweeper. I don't know why I couldn't think of the Sweeper there. But and also Recoil. So this is number 4.
You put Recoil above Rage, huh?
Yeah. So a lot of people kind of go the other way around.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I tend to go Rage first.
Yeah, Rage is in my top 10, so it's definitely there. And then Riot's kind of just outside the top 10 of this. But yeah, a lot of people go the other way. I mean, there's some stuff in Rage that I can't argue. Like if you think Rage is better than Recoil, I can't. I guess for me, it's that opening sequence. Right. It's just so ridiculous. And then I don't know. I guess
I might put Last Man Standing where you put Zero Tolerance. I know they're very similar films, but I might have to go with the Wincott over Patrick.
Right, and he rounds out my top 5. So that one's like right below Hologram Man. Yeah, I think part of the Zero Tolerance is the fact that Mick Fleetwood gets one between the eyes. That just
right. Well, there is that the casino scene. Yeah. In Zero Tolerance is just a delight. Yeah. In fact, the Vegas setting in general is used very well.
Yes, yeah. Second only to Living to Die, right? Was that the one that Wings Hauser did in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah. That's probably the one that I have in my top 10 that most people wouldn't have, but you might probably have.
Oh, I would. Yes. I mean, I would definitely have. I don't know whether it'd be Living to Die or The Art of Dying. It would be different. Or Killer's Edge.
Yes, yeah.
Which is equally fantastic. Killer's Edge is probably in my top 5 or top 10. With Art of Dying is in the top 10, not the. I think yes. The what was the other one? To Die.
Living to Die.
Living to Die is probably. Yeah. You're right. That's probably the one. That's the one with the milk glove scene and the rabbit and all that.
No, that's Art of Dying.
Oh, that's Art of Dying.
Yeah. So Living to Die is that sort of that.
Living to Die is when he goes to play. Yeah, when he goes to play cards with the guy, and it may as well be the dogs playing poker scene.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then when out of no place, there's like jazz experimental dancing. Yeah. And yes, no, that is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, there's a character. He's like
crying on a motorbike.
Right, and he keeps saying somebody's trying to put the bite on Mitten, with the guy's name is Mitten. But the UMA in hockey, they have a player on their team named Mitten. And when I watch their games on ESPN Plus, every time they say the guy's name, up the ice by Mitten, I'm like, somebody's putting the bite on Mitten. And it's like, I cannot say it.
That's amazing. No, you have to say putting the bite on Mitten. Oh, yeah, that's where he has his old friend who's the mobster while he's making a very aggressive sandwich. Oh, that is a joy.
Yes.
That is a joy. So, PM Entertainment. Yes, Hologram Man, PM Entertainment. Clearly a favorite of yours. So give us a lowdown. What happens in Hologram Man, sir?
So Hologram Man. So we get, the movie opens with one of the greatest scenes ever in a PM flick. It takes place in the future. And so you've got cops that are just there's a shootout between cops and baddies. Also this idea, again, PM likes to do this whole idea that LA is going to be just completely crime-ridden in the future. Yeah. And it's just going to be gangs and stuff. And Joe Lara is there. So Joe Lara, when it comes to your PM stars, he's like kind of a few notches down. And people might know him recently because he married a woman who ran a cult in Tennessee named Gwen Shamblin. And it's possible. What? Yes. He married this woman that ran. So this woman started a cult about essentially like using religion to lose weight. And but I mean just really it's as bad a culty kind of stuff as you can imagine. It's like, oh, and apparently Joe Lara essentially like kind of wormed his way in with her because she was getting all this money from her cult, and he was trying to use her money to fund his country music career. But he also claimed that he was a crack.
There's so much Americana just in that sentence. Anyway, carry on. Yeah.
But apparently, so my wife and I, we watched the biopic on this woman that was it had Jennifer Grey playing Gwen Shamblin, and the way that they depicted
they did a movie of the week about it or whatever,
right? Because they died in a plane crash, and the way that Lara did as well. And the way that they depict the dying in the plane crash, they make it sound like Joe Lara was like, I can fly a plane, sure, I'm a pilot, and he doesn't do a good job flying the plane, and they all die. Oh my
God! I had no idea.
Yeah, so this is Joe Lara. I mean, apparently, when he couldn't get movies anymore, he kind of moseyed around. Like they made it sound like he was like a handyman who was like fixing stuff on the compound of the cult, and then kind of knew that this woman Gwen Shamblin had a thing for him, and he essentially kind of become you have
to send me the name of that movie.
Yes,
my wife
I'll try to find it.
Stuff.
I don't even know who the actor is that plays him, but I mean, when you go on, I don't know if she still has her YouTube videos up. Like she posted this video of them getting engaged, and my wife showed me the video of them getting engaged because she would follow these fundamentalists like the 12 kids or 19 kids account or whatever. She always got a kick out of all of them. So she was like, watch this video of this crazy Gwen Shamblin woman, like who has a cult and everything. And I'm like, that's Joe Lara. And she's like, who's Joe Lara? I was like, no, he does these direct-to-video movies that I review on my site. And she's like, no, there's no way that's him. I was like, yeah, no, it's him. It's him. And so he is, yeah.
He joined a weight loss cult. He's an ex straight-to-video action star who joined a weight loss cult.
Well, so he didn't join the cult. He essentially,
he wormed into the bed of a woman who ran a religious weight loss cult. Right. In order to help fund his country and Western film career, Western music career. That is the most like all-American thing that has ever been stated.
It's amazing. And they died because according to the movie, so they died in a plane crash, but according to the movie, it's because he was flying the plane and he wasn't qualified to fly the plane, but he told her he was qualified to fly. So even better, right? Even better at the end there.
Yes. So avarice and ego just took them down. He was like, listen, I once took out the Hologram Man. Well, you didn't really choke. No, but I once took out the Hologram Man, who was Evan Lurie. And so I can fly a plane. And then that ended that. Well, look, a sad end to Joe Lara, but also somewhat comical one. So let's just move on.
Well, so he's trying to shoot these guys, and then suddenly John Amos flies in a car with spikes in the front, and he's got a gun that has explosive tip bullets, which Lara's like, hey, those aren't regulation. Yeah. But it's John Amos.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
No, it's
later
beautiful.
on when they're talking to the governor, he says like this. Oh, show him your little notebook, because like in Hot Fuzz or whatever. But like the police are meant to take notes in their notebook, and that's how they're able to do their job and present a accurate depiction of what happened in court. John Amos, he doesn't carry no notebook. He flies by the seat of his wide pants.
Right, exactly. And then, at the same time, Evan Laurie, who also wrote and directed, he's in a ton of these. He's in maybe 15 or 20 of these. He also did a movie called Guns and Lipstick that I was telling you about, that I've got to find my DVD copy of. It's a Wings Hauser movie. Yeah. But he plays, is it Jerry Hall in the movie, or Sally Kirkland? I think it's Sally Kirkland. He plays her boy toy in that. But this is his pet project, which, again, PM was kind of like canon with that. Like, if you had a pet project, they'd let you make it.
And if there's anything that sort of I would be critical with about this movie, is that because the lead bad guy wrote the film and sort of produced the film and ushered the movie in, is Joe Lara at no point in this movie, is efficient, strong, good at fighting, good at driving, good at shooting, Joe Lara fails every single step of the way. The only person who's good at anything is Evan Lurie playing the character, and if ever there was a writer's ego, it's calling your character's name / Gallagher.
Yes.
I'm Evan Lurie, and I'm playing / Gallagher.
Yes, exactly.
Which is, to me, just sounds like piss prop comic. Because it's like, in England, we say go for a slash, meaning go for a piss.
Oh, right.
And Gallagher is, of course, the guy who hits watermelons with a hammer. So I just think piss prop comic when I think / Gallagher. He thought, though, it sounded hard as nails.
Exactly. So he, he has this big thing where he takes a bus hostage and all this stuff, and ends up with a standoff between Gallagher Evan Lurie and John Amos and Joe Lara. He kills John Amos, but he's arrested. And in the future, they have this new program where they turn you into a hologram.
He also kills the governor.
That's right. He kills the governor. That's right. Kills the governor, and then he kills John Amos, and then he gets turned into a hologram by the jerk from Animal House.
Gets turned into a hologram. Yeah, that's what happens in this movie. Yep.
And then apparently, while you're a hologram, you get reprogrammed as a human, and then they can turn you back from a hologram into a person. Right. But what happens is Larry of Larry, Daryl, and Daryl fame from Newhart, he's working with Joe Campanella and Joe Lara's girlfriend.
The character actors in this is insane. I mean, the level of recognizable faces is kind of incredible. You've got Michael Nouri, who people will know from pretty much every TV show and the film Flashdance. Right. You've got William Sanderson, that obviously people will know from Blade Runner and Last Man Standing, and the Deadwood TV series, and various other things like that. You've got Nicholas Worth, who I know mainly from Darkman, but is also in Don't Answer the Phone, which is like an early slasher, and No Way Out as well. What's incredible is that Nicholas Worth is the only actor, dare I say, that has been in 2 movies that posit that if you don't have much of a face and or body, you can just put on plastic skin and pretend to be anyone you want to be, because that's the premise of Darkman, and it's the premise of Hologram Man, right?
Right, exactly. Because what happens is that he's going up and. So the other thing is that a corporation has taken over the government in L.A.
Right.
And so this James Doughton from Animal House
and Spies Like Us.
Spies Like Us, yeah. Also, he was in the Shark Jump episode of Happy Days. So,
of course he was.
Yeah, so I believe he was, at least, I think that was a 3-part episode when they were out in L.A., and I think he was in at least, 2 of the 3 parts. He's also in Paul Bartel's Mortuary Academy. Right. And he was in the original TV series V, only 1 episode, but no, I mean he's one of those guys. He stopped acting shortly after this. Did 1 cameo in Sorority Boys from 2002. No doubt a nod to his Animal House character. But apart from that, has all but quit the acting life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then we mentioned Joe Campanella, Derek McGrath, who plays this sort of this interesting like secretary character within the company. He did sitcoms, things like that in the 80s. But I know of him from the Bloodsport 4, the Dark Kumite, where he calls he calls
the Dark Kumite.
The Dark Kumite, which
as opposed to the regular ones, which are quite light and lovely.
Right, exactly. It's a Dark Kumite that's run by Ben Franklin.
Okay.
But I mean, the character, like the person running the Dark Kumite looks exactly like Ben Franklin. But anyway, Derek McGrath, he's the warden, and he calls Daniel Bernhardt a shit-fuck cop killer. And so my friends and I, whenever we'd watch a movie and someone would say shit, we would just immediately say "fuck cop killer" after, because we were huge fans of the Dark Kumite and
of course, who
Bloodsport 4.
wouldn't be? But a great fan of the Dark Kumite. And then, of course, rounding out these character actor behemoths, we've got David Kagan, who I know from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. But who is, of course, also in a bunch of TV shows. 21 Jump Street he was in, Freddy's Nightmares, Matlock, Body Chemistry. He's in, and a bunch of others. But yes, I know him from Friday the 13th, Part 6, where he plays the police chief.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people they get in this movie. And of course, just within sort of the background stuff, you've got Art Camacho doing the fight choreography. So at the end of the movie, when two holograms fight, that's him choreographing that.
That's why the fight choreography is not very good.
Right.
I mean, I know Art Camacho has been on like a bunch of these movies, but he's not,
Well, he definitely does not.
He's not Corey Yen when it comes to like choreography. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. He doesn't. Right. And then the stunt coordinator is Colin S. McKay, or Cole S. McKay. Sorry, he's actually Colin McKay in Out for a Kill. Or no, is that the movie? No. It's the one that it's this direct to video Seagal movie. It's Out for a Kill, because it's a combination of Out for Justice and Hard to Kill. But Cole S. McKay does that stunt choreography. But when you think of like the stunt coordinators of PM, obviously Spiro Rosatos, working with guys like Chad Stahelski and Darren Prescott. That's kind of your the one people most know for. But
you've got Craig Baxley's son is on the stunt team. So Craig R. Baxley is a stuntman turned film director and TV director who directed lots of episodes of the A-Team, and his son works on stunts on this picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Cole S. McKay, I would say, is probably like right after. He kind of starts before Rosato starts with them, but then as the time goes on, there's one other name too, Joe Murphy, that he's referred to as like Broadway Joe Murphy. He does some great stunts for some of the movies as well.
And Simon Rhee.
Simon Rhee is on this one. Yeah, so on this one you've got, like you said, you got Craig Arba and Simon Rhee working here on this one, and also Camacho does some of the stunts as well. But yeah, I mean, Cole S. McKay, he is the flamethrower guy in Evan Laurie's band. So he's the one who sets Joe Lara on fire.
Right.
So that's him. So he's the stunt coordinator, but he has that one part there as well. So, but yeah, I mean, when you think of like kind of the best PM stuff, those are probably your three sort of action director, stunt coordinator names. Spiro Rosatos, Cole S. McKay, Broadway Joe Murphy. And so this is definitely, Cole S. McKay. I mean, it definitely has everything you want from, I guess there is a little difference between a Rosatos and some of the others, because like Rosatos does like these takes these chances kind of on a different level than the other guys do.
He sort of, so once he comes into the PM Entertainment fold, he does more what I would call sort of lengthy set pieces. Mm-hmm. So this movie followed, there's sort of two types of PM Entertainment movie when we're talking about the stunts and the action. There is sort of the something like what I kind of think of is like the Land of the Free Rage type, which is sort of woven in an almost ongoing, moving forward, dramatic kind of stunt set pieces where they go, okay, this is a bus chase set piece, and that's going to now play for like 15 minutes, and we're going to do a ton of gags within this one piece. And then there's the every 7-minute mentality, which comes from Roger Corman, which is every 7 minutes something has to happen. Now, Hologram Man is more that. Yes, there is a very stunt heavy set piece at the beginning. In fact, kind of two back to back. There's the what you would call like the pre-credit sequence, and then there's the bus chase that you mentioned, which I feel like are more those kind of set pieces. But once it kind of settles into itself, it's really just gun shootouts at the big monolithic corporation building.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too that Rosados seem to always like to do is kind of push the boundaries of what a flaming stunt person can do.
Right.
But in this, it's just the person's on fire and that's it. Where
although I have to say, the scene where they set Evan Lurie on fire as his hologrammatic bad guy character, I thought was done very well. Because it's all sort of done in one take kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you don't see like for example, in Riot, where you've got a flaming stunt guy riding a dirt bike, or
no, you don't see
the Sweeper, where you've got a flaming person falling out of a building, landing in a van, and then exploding.
Right.
Yeah. But it's funny because again, even though it's not Spiro Rosado sort of next level stuff, there's just so much happening. Like you said, the 7-minute rule, like they definitely make sure that they fit that 7-minute rule. I mean, this plot is ridiculous because essentially what happens is that Evan Lurie's hologram is allowed to escape where it's being held. And then there's sort of this protoplasm that they put on him so that he doesn't look like a obnoxious hologram thing the whole movie, but actually looks like a human. And then eventually he kills
like ionized rubber or some bollocks.
Right, exactly. It's a protoplasm that holds in his stuff. And then at the same time, Joe Lara ends up getting killed by Evan Lurie, and his girlfriend makes him into the same thing. Only he's not as strong. He has to use his wits if he's going to beat Evan Lurie.
Well, because they've established that Evan Lurie is unkillable by modern corporeal things. So he can't kung fu fight him to death. He can't blow him up. He can't shoot him. He can't do anything. His only option is to also become a hologram man.
Yeah.
But it's okay because Joe Lara is so bad at his job and fails so frequently that the bad guy Evan Lurie flat out killing him does not come as a surprise.
Right.
Because look, I loved this for all the PM entertainmentness of it. But there were definitely things in it that annoyed me. The whole idea where he's like, well, we've got to go and get my real body. Why? If you had your real body and you put your personality back in your real body, you would suddenly be killable and therefore defeat the entire point. You don't need your real body, but it's just an excuse for them to go back into the big, skyscraper that PM's rented and blow some stuff up again, which is one thing. Then you've got the whole thing that like, You've literally got a scene in this where Joe Lara goes into virtual reality to do a gun training thing and is able to, he goes, I'm only going to take 12 bullets. And she's like, but there's 12 bad guys in there. And he's like, well, bullets cost too much money or something. But essentially this idea that Joe Lara is this sharp shot that, can predict every turn and shoot everyone quickly and never hits a hostage and blah, 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 blah. And yet when faced at the beginning of the film with Evan Lurie holding the governor at least an arm's length, if not a full, it's not like he's got the governor in front of him and it's an impossible shot. I think even me, and I'm not good at anything, I think even I could have shot Evan Lurie between the eyes the way that scene was filmed. And Joe Lara instead lets John Amos get shot and puts his gun down, leaving Lurie ample time to shoot the governor in the head. And that kind of stuff annoys me because I'm like, well, he's either like this badass and they have this incredible adversary. There's one point where Evan Lurie is sad because he's got everything that he wants, but he doesn't have his combatant anymore, his adversary anymore. And you kind of go, but he wasn't a good adversary. Like he never did anything. Like he's not competent at anything. We see the one scene where in VR he's very good at shooting people, but outside of that he's not good at shooting people. He's not good at fighting. He's not good at driving a limousine and trying to stop a governor from getting assassinated, which all you would have to do if the bad guy was coming at you in a bus would be simply to just drive the limousine to a building and get out of the limousine. But no, he doesn't do that either. And so he's pretty much useless. He ends up, there's a whole bit where like he goes on 2 raids to try and get Evan Lurie, fails miserably both times. And the guy was it Michael Nouri, who's playing like the now head cheese of the corporation, who wants to like have supreme power over the city of LA. He says to him, if you fuck up one more time, like that's it for us and you're fired and blah, 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 blah. So you think, because in any other action movie, this would be the point where he's like, right, I'm going to get a team together. And because he has a really good idea. He suddenly goes, well, if I can't kill Evan Lurie, I'll kill all the people around him, or at least lock them up or whatever. Because really, you would only need to get William Sanderson. If you stopped William Sanderson, Evan Lurie would not be able to get all the, technical help and the fact that this guy's those polymers and everything else. Like none of the other guys, like Flamethrower dude, doesn't know science. Tiny Lister walking around in his futuristic football gear with his 8 on his forehead. He doesn't know science. Like all you have to do is kill Sanderson, and then you're like fucked, right? But no. So you think that's what he's going to do? Put a team together of people and go after Evan Lurie's team. But no, he just does the same thing again. In fact, at one point, they phone him up and he's just lying around in bed.
Right.
I'm like, you've got Hologram Man out there knocking over banks and killing people like they're tissue paper, and you're just lying around shirtless in bed, you big goon.
Well, because they were trying to paint this idea that Joe Lara in the beginning of the movie is like some, green rookie, but then after there's like however much time passes that Evan Lurie is supposed to be getting reprogrammed, that Joe Lara becomes this hardened police officer. But they don't do a good enough job, I think, of, like you said, of executing that. That, like, first off, Joe Lara doesn't do the dark, brooding cop thing well. Which
he does I'm wearing too much makeup in my beard thing very well, is what he does.
Exactly. So you have that part there. But then, like you said, because the story does not fit well with a 90-minute, action film where you're doing action sequences every 7 minutes. The plot itself, probably you really only got like maybe 45 minutes of plot out of this movie, because otherwise it's just, wash, rinse, repeat. It's just, Try to defeat Lurie, fail, come back, do it all over again, which is what we kind of end up in. It's a cycle of wash, rinse, repeat until finally it's just like, just make him a hologram man already, Or The other thing too is that making him a hologram man, to me, I think is kind of a cheat in the film. I think the better result is Evan Lurie figures out a way to defeat him. He and his girlfriend come up with a solution of like either electrocuting or something like that.
Couldn't they have just done what he does anyway?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like they trap him because normally when you're made into a hologram, you go into this machine, you are sucked into this little, like your hologram essence or whatever is sucked into this little jar, and you're basically put into stasis. Sorry.
Yeah.
You are basically put into stasis. And then from there, every so often they reawake you, and you've either taken to the brainwashing to make you a better person, or you haven't. And in Evan Lurie's case, he hasn't, and they're meant to be putting him back in the bottle, but he breaks free. At the end, when Joe Lara has become a hologram man too, they get into the room that is like the council room where they adjudicate people and where they can trap you back into the little jar. And all he does is trap him back into the little, like the fight that he has with him is hopeless. Like he's never going to beat him fight-wise. Right. So, I mean, technically what they should have done, the way this movie should have played out is he should have got the team together. He should have slowly started picking off, Tiny Lister and William Sanderson and all those guys, Nicholas Worth. Then he should have put Evan Lurie in the little jar and disposed of him. And then he should have gone after the real criminals who are the corporation. Because the real interesting thing that I think could have been played better with, but they certainly lean on it a little, is the idea that Joe Lara is a man between two villains, and that him fighting for the benefit of Michael Nuri is no better than him siding with Evan Lurie. And in fact, Evan Lurie wants to put the world back the way it was. In fact, Evan Lurie wants to liberate the people. If anything, in any other movie, Evan Lurie would be the hero, which is why, again, Evan Lurie writing this and producing this probably not the best idea. They probably should have gone, thanks for bringing this to us, Lurie. Now let's write it as if you weren't. Because really, Evan Lurie is the hero of this movie. He wants to save the people. You know, he wants to get us away from our corporate oppressors. The only thing that's bad about him is that he doesn't hold any of his promises and he keeps shooting people in the face. If he stopped doing that and just worked towards liberating the people, he might have had a better success rate. I'm just saying. Meanwhile, Joe Lara has spent entirely too much time doing makeup and not enough time doing his Brazilian jiu-jitsu because he's fucking useless. But no, there's all these moments in the plot where you're just like, well, that doesn't... Like I said, he doesn't have to become a hologram man to put him in the little jar. Like, he could have just done that by... All he has to do is... And also, I mean, I guess he had to be a hologram man to kick him... Like, he kicks him or zaps him with something that immobilizes him so long that even Lurie is lying on the ground as a hologram man, who we already know is impervious to everything. So I don't really understand how he's like winded or lying on the ground. But he's lying on the ground in the tube that's going to turn him back into a hologram, turn him back into a little jar guy. And instead of, I don't know, finding a little bit of hologrammatic energy just to crawl out of the way of the laser that's going to atomize you, he just lies there for 10 minutes going, no, don't do that. No, please don't do that. And it keeps cutting back to him for like 30 minutes of him lying there. I'm like, how is a hologram man winded? Like, how does this hologram technology even work? And I'm like, wait, he can be winded and lie there and not be able to do anything about the fate that he's about to be sucked into a thing. Like, he couldn't just, I don't know, slide his body out of the canister. Like, what's going on? Yeah. And it doesn't take smarts to do what Joe Lara does. So this whole thing about, well, you're more powerful than me, so I need to use my smarts. You've not shown us any smarts throughout the entire movie. So me suddenly hanging my hat on the idea that Joe Lara's got some trick up his sleeve is fucking ridiculous.
Well, because the idea is that, like, I guess he somehow is able to throw the fireball because he sticks his hand in a computer.
Yes.
And then he can type on the computer. And that's what it, and like you said,
at one point Evan Lurie can reach out of a TV set and strangle a dude. That's apparently a thing a hologram man can do.
Right. Yeah. It again, that's the other piece with this is that, and again, I guess it's one of those things where it's like a PM thing where they're just like, yeah, whatever it's convenient for the plot to get us more explosions, let's let it happen. Right. Because the continuity piece, they're just like, it just seems like this whole hologram thing, they didn't really think it through well. They
only have the money to do the effect for like 10 minutes.
Right.
So
exactly.
The rest of the time he has to wear this all body skin, which you sort of buy with Evan Lurie because you're like, well, okay, he's got the scientist Sanderson guy working with him. And they dumped him into a big vat and it made him a rubber body. All right, I guess I'll buy that. But then when you get to Joe Lara, his girlfriend just goes, well, don't worry, we'll put a bit of blush on your face. We'll put a bit of foundation.
A jar.
Yeah, like a jar of foundation. And suddenly she's able to make realistic arm hair and fucking eyeballs. At one point you see her just...
Yeah, she airbrushes.
Yeah. Just wipe a single airbrush across his eye and suddenly a perfectly formed eye. Baffling, but she must be the Banksy of her generation, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
An artist extraordinaire. No, there's a lot of goofy shit like that, but also there's a lot of like running, shooting, exploding, which is a lot of fun. The only thing that I think it doesn't have a great, with some of the sequences, especially one of the last ones where they do the raid on the warehouse yet again, is there's a lot of there's not a lot of spatial awareness and there's not a lot of awareness of who the good guy is versus the bad guy. Because there was a bunch of times where I'm like, wait, was that a good guy who was just shot or a bad guy who was just shot? And I sort of went, I don't care.
No. Well, because the spatial awareness thing. I mean, think about Recoil, right? Where it's like, how big is that warehouse that they're doing the chase? So that's another PM thing, right? Is the spatial awareness is like just allows us to blow up shit wherever we want to, and I mean, it's like the way Evan Laurie dispatches of Nori at the end, where he just blows up his limo. Again, like none of that makes any sense, but we got to see a really cool limo explosion. So, okay, I guess I'm okay with it, you know? And I guess that's kind of what PM does, right? Is PM's idea is like, do you want the explosion or not? And it's like, we're going to give it to you this way. If it makes sense, if you're worried about whether it makes sense or not, then you don't want the explosion, I guess. Or, if the movie can make sense and you don't get an explosion, or it's not going to make any sense and you're going to get an explosion.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, like as a PM entertainment movie, and especially as a sci-fi PM entertainment movie, because I feel like when PM Entertainment tries to do sci-fi action, they've sort of almost added one too many elements. You know what I mean? You'd rather the money was going towards more death-defying stunts and less, I don't know, putting a weird plastic shell on a car to try and make it look futuristic, or whatever, or building a big sign for like AmeriCorp or whatever the fucking corporation, CalCorp or whatever it's called. This thing, instead of doing any of that, like just set it in regular times and don't make him a hologram, and we're fine with it.
Right.
But sometimes they're like, well, Lawnmower Man's doing something, so maybe we should make Hologram Man or whatever.
Well, that's part of it, right? That's another piece of it, is that they just were always kind of making whatever else was being made at the time. So there's that piece of it. I mean, again, going back to Spiro Rosatos with the sweeper, in the sweeper, you can see all the places that they cut corners so that they can let Spiro Rosatos do more action. I mean, it's like, there's no police chief in the sweeper. It's just C. Thomas Howell laying on a bed without a shirt on in his jeans in the middle of the night, and his answering machine going off with an angry police chief telling him he's suspended or whatever. Right. They're like, we're not going to use a set of a police station. We're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. We're just going to give it to Spiro Rosatos and let him, throw some more flaming stuntmen out of buildings and, have cars, shooting oxygen tanks out of the back of, whatever it was.
Well, there's the sequence with the flaming barrels being pushed off the back of the truck.
Right. There's because it's one of the things I realized when I did Riot on a recent episode with Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast, and he's kind of new to direct video stuff, so I thought that would be a fun one because Christmas theme and all of that. But as we were going over this stuff, I was realizing like there's just not a lot of information on these PM movies, and so you're watching, like for example this Hologram Man one. So many things that we're watching in it, we're like, well, why did they make that decision, or what prompted them to go in this direction here? And if you look at like for example, like a Beverly Hills Cop movie, right? There's tons of trivia, so we know like, okay, here's why Part 3 had its issues. Here are the things that happen. These PM flicks, you don't really get any of that.
No.
Look at some of the trivia that's in here, because there is actually some trivia for this movie, and one of them, I don't know if it's true or not, or if this is a joke, but apparently Evan Laurie was on so much anabolic steroids that he was prone to, quote, roid rage. And some shots of him under that roid rage were left in the movie due to budget constraints that prevented them from being reshot. So essentially they're saying that his acting, when he was like really emoting and screaming and stuff like that, they're saying that was roid rage. I guess, I don't know, but.
Apparently also the future cops are wearing uniforms from V. Wasn't one of these guys in V that I just
think
said?
So. Yeah.
Nicholas Worth,
the guy from the guy from Animal House, right?
Yes,
Charles. It was Charles Naughton. Is that James Doughton? James Doughton.
He was in V.
Yeah.
Evan Laurie and director Richard Penman worked on 4 films together, and Nicholas Worth made 2 guest appearances in the series Tarzan: The Epic Adventures. The main actor in the series was Joe Lara. And it is funny, isn't Joe Lara in that Frank Zagarino movie, Armstrong? Or whatever.
Oh, yes.
And isn't he called like Ponytail in that?
I think so. Yes, I believe that's his name. Yes.
But there was a lot of those action men with long hair in the 80s, early 90s. Whether it was the guy from Samurai Cop, or whether it's Joe Lara, or whether it's Lorenzo Lamas in Renegades, or there's a lot of like. Who was the guy who was sort of the model from the front of romance
Oh,
bodice
Fabio.
with Fabio. That's it.
Yes.
There was sort of a lot of Fabio-looking Jesus-type fellas who decided to turn their hand to action.
Yeah. Well, Matthias Hughes is another one with the long
Right.
hair, massive, ape
You would
drape.
think that it would be like if I'm fighting you, I'm going for the hair. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I'm going to just go for the hair, grab the hair,
Yeah.
and then like I've got you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like anyone fighting me is going to grab the beard. Like the
Right.
beard it's the thing. It's right there in
Yeah.
front of you. You can't resist grabbing it. So the hair just seems to me like not a practical application whatsoever. Because, you're doing roundhouse kicks, that hair hits you in the face. You then got to be
Right.
like, where am I? Bullets could be firing.
Yeah.
Don the Dragon Wilson had long hair for a period in his career, and it just seemed ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Or with Gary Daniels. Remember Gary Daniels with the long hair?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but it was a thing for a while.
Yeah, then it was like, I guess it was like a hair metal thing or a grunge thing. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any of these guys being into either hair metal or grunge, but
No.
but yes.
Yeah.
So Hologram Man, I mean, I don't know that I'm putting it as high up as you in my PM Entertainment list. It certainly, I tell you what though, it certainly does what I want a PM Entertainment movie to do. It gives me all the ridiculous explosions, gunplay, random plot points, stupid hair, ridiculous line readings. It gives me everything I want from a PM Entertainment movie. I just think they did it slightly better elsewhere and did it with a story that didn't, like every so often in this movie, I'm just like, well, just press the thing or just do the thing or what, like, or do some detective work, track down where these guys are and like kill them one by one, like do something.
Yes.
And we never kind of truly get to see that. So it was a frustrating watch, but it also was a satisfying watch because it had all the action that I wanted from a PM Entertainment movie.
Yeah, and I will say I do have a special place in my heart for Evan Lurie. I guess I'm an American kickboxer too, and I've always gotten a kick out of him and stuff. And so now, granted, in Guns and Lipstick, he has a fanny pack, and so I railed on David Bradley in Cyborg Cop for having a fanny pack the entire time. So when I saw that Evan Lurie had one in Guns and Lipstick, I was like, oh, geez, so I can't, I can't respect, I did this whole joke. I think it was my Last Man Standing review where I talked about what it would have been like if a director or somebody on set had tried to get Jeff Wincott to put on a fanny pack. Right. And he's just like smoking a cigarette the whole time and just like looking at the guy like, what?
Wincott would have eaten a fanny pack in anger and then punched the guy into next week.
Right.
Wincott was so tense the whole time he was in any movie, I feel like. Very angry and tense.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, he brought an intensity to those PM flicks. Like I can see, like, for example, you can make a good case for why Last Man Standing should be above Hologram Man on my top 10 list, or like Rage. You can make a really good case why I should like Rage better than this movie. I think that's the thing with PM flicks is that there's just like at least for me, like there's so many great ones that it's like I love them all, and I love so many of them, and it's like like people can I can see why everybody likes different things in them for sure.
Totally, yeah. And I don't think with PM Entertainment movies, there's enough to go round, and there is no right or wrong. You know what I mean? They made 150 movies in like 10 years or something ridiculous. Right. And so, if you didn't like that one, another one comes along in a minute. Right. You know what I mean? Yes. Or if you really liked that one, another one will come along in like 3 minutes. Like it almost works that every other PM Entertainment movie is a great movie. Like it's they don't hit it out of the park every single time, but every other PM Entertainment movie is a great movie. They have a surprisingly high hit rate.
Yes,
they really do. In a way that I Canon does, but it also doesn't. Like, I love the Canon aesthetic, but I can't say I love every single Canon movie. There are some that I really, really love. There's a couple of Bronson that I think are absolutely fantastic. And some of the early slasher films are a lot of fun. And obviously, my favorite canon movie is Bolero, starring Bo Derek. Obviously, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, my one of my favorite. It's funny that everyone sort of again in that documentary attacks certain films, but like I love, and we were talking earlier about like films that are fun, and that everyone shits on. I love Master of the Universe. I loved Master of the Universe growing up, and I love Master of the Universe now. I love Howard the Duck. I loved Howard the Duck growing up, and I love Howard the Duck now. I love The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I loved it when I was growing up. I love it now. Like, all these movies were, like, shit on relentlessly. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I bet I would enjoy Cutthroat Island, which is another one of those that is always called, like, one of the worst movies ever. And very often when people say, like, Man and Web, I haven't watched it, but I bet it's just boring. I bet it's not a bad movie. I bet it's just a bit boring.
It's not even close. It's entertaining in spots.
Right.
I had fun with it. I enjoyed it.
But they
I
go,
didn't hate
it's the worst movie ever. And you watch it and you go, no, it's not. The only one where someone was completely right about it, and to the point where I was completely baffled, is that I can usually tolerate and or fully enjoy Adam Sandler movies. Like, I'm not anti-Sandler. I'm pretty much on the Sandler train. I think that if you want a big, dumb comedy, no one else is really making them. And I quite like big, dumb comedies sometimes. Everyone said Jack and Jill is his worst fucking movie. Never watched Jack and Jill. It's his worst fucking movie. Well, before the new year, I watched Jack and Jill, and they're right. Jack and Jill doesn't have a fucking laugh in it. I don't know what anyone thought they were doing. That director, Frederick Forrest or whatever, has done other Sandler movies that are fine. The writing team that wrote on that have done other Sandler movies that are fine. Whether it was his pair up with Nicholson, or his pair up with who else has he paired? He's paired up with a couple of other big actors, hasn't he? Has he done a De Niro movie? No,
not De Niro.
Is Keitel in one of his movies?
Maybe. I'm trying to think of what other.
But like Anger Management with Nicholson is one of my favorites. I think Nicholson in that movie is fucking amazing. Pacino in Jack and Jill, like, it's baffling to me how unfunny it is. It honestly, considering his hit ratio is kind of 1 in every 4 movies is a really great comedy, and 1 in every 3 movies is like a perfectly watchable dumb movie, and then like 1 or 2 of them are fairly average. This was so bad. It's the only time that I've agreed wholeheartedly with everyone else. Is on Jack and Jill, some random fucking Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, I think the one for me was Jersey Girl. Like, because even Kevin Smith, I saw in an interview he did with GQ, he was like, we thought we were making a movie and it just didn't work out. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, it just didn't work out. I totally get
Kevin
it.
Smith's Jersey Girl?
Yeah.
I like Kevin Smith's Jersey Girl, but that's me.
I watched it. I was like, I totally get why he thought it didn't work. Like, I get, but yeah, that was the one for me, I guess. That was mine where I was like, okay.
Sense. Yeah. But also at the same time, like, that's one that I think people are too hard on. Yeah. And shit all over, but whatever, it's fine. It's not James Caan he worked with, and That's My Boy. That's right. The other actor I think he's working with, who's like one of those classic like 70s actors that he has and things.
I love Darren McGavin and Billy Madison.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just
fantastic.
Yeah.
He's had Dan Aykroyd in a few of his movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. He had Burt Reynolds, I think, in one of his movies. I have no problem with Adam Sandler.
Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers was in Happy Gilmore.
Yes.
The late Carl Weathers, yeah. So
yeah, I have no problem with him. But yeah, Jack and Jill is fucking awful without a joke in it. But no, in general, movies are fun. Hologram Man is, I'm not going to say it's top tier PM, but it's certainly not bottom. It's sort of a good 3.5 out of 5 is my rating for it.
Yeah, I probably have it a little higher because I have it at my fourth of my top. So I have on my letterboxd. I've got my top 10 p.m.
Right.
I'm thinking of extending it to top 20. But there's so many movies that I just even as just us talking, I was like, oh, I forgot about that one, or that
Yeah, no, I need to go through and really make my top 10, I think.
Now, in terms of like where people can find this beyond VHS, there's a good YouTube version, and so I think you and I both actually may have playlists on YouTube on our YouTube channels for
I do,
PM.
yes.
Yeah, so you can check that. They're in there. It works. I think I guess because it's in the '90s and maybe that '90s period they were better than the '80s ones for YouTube versions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I even have and I don't know how accurate this is anymore, but I even have a full PM Entertainment spreadsheet
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
that lists the movies that I own on VHS and the movies that I own on DVD. Because a lot of them, because Echo Bridge and Mill Creek owned a lot of PM Entertainment movies for a while, and there's like an Echo Bridge. And on the front it says like Steven Seagal 25 action movies, and what it means is he's in one of them and the rest are just random action movies. Like, for example, Deadly Breed is apparently on, which is their fourth movie, is apparently on the Steven Seagal 25 action movies DVD that I own, and it's also on YouTube. Like, I have whether they're streaming as well. So I have an exhaustive PM Entertainment list of what I own and where stuff is streaming. And predominantly, they're mostly streaming on YouTube, but you will find some on Freevee or Amazon Prime.
Yeah, this one's also on a service called Fossum, which is like a Tubi style.
Right.
So you can find, and I mean, the thing is, I think because Pepin and Merhi, they kind of just let the thing go in the early 2000s. I think Inferno that we talked about on my podcast, the Van Damme movie, I think that might have been one of the last PM films, and that actually didn't have Pepin. Pepin had left PM at that point when
they go. Well,
Merhi.
I mean, I go into the slightly post, because there was the pre-PM City Lights that had three producers, one of whom left, and then it became PM. And then after Pepin and Merhi left, it went to another company, I forget what it is, and they made movies through till 2006. But so you've got stuff like post Inferno, you still have like Avalanche, Y2K, Water Damage, Hot Boys, of course, that Jeff Speakman is in. Epicenter, which is sort of the last Gary Daniels, Tracy Lords, Jeff Fahey kind of movie that they do. Final film produced by Richard Pepin and Joseph Merhi is Epicenter. Then after that, you just have some real randoms like Jailbait, High Noon, Little Heroes 2, Backyard Dogs, Camouflage, Fire Trap with Dean Cain and Laurie Petty, Layover with David Hasselhoff, Con Express with Arnold Vosloo, Tunnel with Daniel Baldwin, and Crash Landing with Michael Pare. And then the very last movie that is considered PM adjacent is Push in 2006, starring Jason Jennings.
That's right. Yeah. And I think like that Dean Cain one, it's like they distributed it, but they didn't produce it or something. It's weird. It's like
it's like there's a scraggler of a few, but But no, I have the only post Pepin movie that I own two of them. I own Camouflage with Leslie Nielsen, and I own Crash Landing with Michael Pare.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into as much of those later ones. I probably should. I mean, I have so many to catch up on, even from like that '90s period that I have on like on different YouTube lists or
I own a bunch that I haven't even watched, dude. Like, I have it listed here, like which ones I own versus which ones I've watched. I still have so many. I mean, every time I go down to the archive, they have all these VHS out, and all I'm doing is looking on the spines for the PM Entertainment logo. Because although there are a few out there that were released on VHS that are PM Entertainment movies that don't have the logo on the side. 90% of them do. So what's weird is they've had forever the Jack Scalia romantic comedy PM Entertainment, Amore.
Right.
They've had that on VHS. I just can't bring myself to spend the money on it. But I probably should if I'm going to be a completist. I do own Bikini Summer 2. So if I own Bikini Summer 2, I should probably own Amore.
Well, that's like when I was reviewing all of the Don the Dragon Wilson movies, which I've now, of course, fallen behind because he's made some new ones. But I had to review Hollywood Safari. It's just, and that's a PM flick as well. So it's like a combination of PM. I think even Art Camacho had something to do with that one. Probably. He had something to do with all,
No, but they made some random ones. They made some random ones, definitely. I remember I was reading an article earlier that was talking about the early ones like Repo Jake, but I'm like, Repo Jake isn't like an early one. It's sort of it's when they start to kind of ramp up a little bit.
Exactly.
It's after they sort of drop the ongoing Chance films, all of which don't get hugely great reviews. I mean, I've got a couple I want to see. I own LA Heat, and I think LA Vice I have as well. So I could watch a couple of those. But really, for me, PM ramps up when they start working with Wings, obviously. Yeah. And then once you get into the Don the Dragon Wilson, Tracy Lords, Lorenzo Lamas, Jeff Wingcott era, and Don the Dragon Wilson, that's when PM becomes PM. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that early period, I mean, you got Shotgun in '89, which is just absurd. It's just like this is, and I believe that one was on the Roku channel had it or something like that. But it's like you watch that and you're just like, what is going on? It doesn't really have anybody in it. I think Paulo Taka is in it. But yeah, you get a lot of William Smith in some of those early ones, and it's just like. Do. And there's not much better than just a William Smith like behind a desk with a gravelly voice yelling at somebody. Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah, there's a few like East LA Warriors. I still haven't seen that one, and that one is available on. I think it's on Tubi, and I need to do it. I just need to watch more of those. So what is this foursome then? Is there a downloadable app for it, or is it just streaming on digital? I think it's just streaming on digital. I think I used it to I don't know if they have an app. That's a good question. Because they have Midnight Warrior. They have a ton of these right, exactly. PM entertainments from the early days. I was just looking up to see what can I watch, and a lot of them are on this foursome thing, I think. Yeah, that's a good let me see if I look up Fossum TV. It looks like they got the FilmRise catalog, and FilmRise used to have a lot of this stuff. Right, exactly. No, it does look like they have an app. Yeah, they have a Fossum app. So it's essentially awesome with the word F. And they have Shotgun on here. This might be like a new thing to find lots of PM Entertainment movies on. Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. They've got an app here, so you put it on your tablet or your phone or whatever. Yeah, that's Is it free? It's free. Yes, it's like Tubi. It works like Tubi, so it's got commercials in it. Dude, it has Angels of the City on it. It has all the PM Entertainment movies. Yeah. All right. So this fuck. Well, that's it for 2025. Yeah. That's what right. Exactly. That's what I'm watching. Yeah. Yeah. Angels of the City. That's what I've been. I don't know if I've got that one on. That might be on Tubi as well, but maybe not. Any more on Hologram Man, dude? I think, especially now that it's on Fossum or YouTube, I think you're looking for a fun actioner. It's a little long. It's about 100 minutes, so it's a little longer than your usual PM. But that's why I started the podcast late, because I was still like, oh, wait, 10 more minutes to go. Exactly. I thought they were wrapping it up. Yeah, normally 80 minutes and we're done with exactly. Yeah, so it's a little long for PM, but the action quotient is solid, and it's you gotta like you said, there's a lot of plot holes, but also a lot of explosions. And a lot of shootouts and stuff like that too. Yeah, great. Yeah. And anything else about what's going on with you, direct-to-video connoisseur, your latest novel, all that kind of stuff? Yeah. So my newest book. Let's see if I can reach it here. My newest book is Nadia and Aiden. It looks like I think I've got my blur on here. Oh, you've got a copy as well.
You've got it as well. That's right. You bought it as well. Yes. So this is my newest one. It's a novella. It's about, I don't know, 170 pages or whatever, but I use a slightly bigger font as well. But yeah, it follows two fraternal twins who grew up in France, but their mother's American. So they come to the United States to get in touch with their American heritage. And it's told in a unique sort of dual first person narration style.
Yeah. And Nadia is Aiden spelled backwards.
Exactly. Yeah. So their names, that's so the character that's their father, he's this character named Mads. So I used to write these free writes on MySpace, these sort of like flash fiction free writes about this dandy sort of confirmed bachelor character in Boston and his Norwegian companion Mads. And so their father is Mads. So cool. They kind of show up in the book as well.
But that's available on Amazon. The link to that will be in the usual podcast notes and on the website. I think I normally just link to your author page on Amazon and people can buy whatever book they want to buy, rather than doing all the individual links. But yes, definitely pick up Matt's books. Anything else going on with you? So any series you're doing on the show or anything we should know about?
Yeah, the podcast is every Tuesday night Eastern time. Nothing too crazy, just sort of the usual, kind of just going through the usual direct to video stuff. So yeah, you can always tune in. Definitely, probably the best thing is to subscribe on iTunes or whatever podcatcher, because sometimes with those DTVC extra ones, the solo ones I do myself, I don't advertise them. I just sort of post them, so you won't know on social media or something like that. If but the main podcast, I'm always posting, social media links, all that stuff.
Yeah, so just subscribe to your podcatcher. And I put on, I think the link that I linked to from the description goes to one of those pod aggregators that will allow people to download you from whatever they use.
Oh, that's not that's a good idea.
What is it? Is it Pod F? What is the?
Oh, I'll have to look into that because on my website, DTV Connoisseur.
Podlink, it's called Podlink. And if you go to Podlink, if you go to Podlink, if your podcast is on Amazon or on Spotify or any of those, Podlink will also find all the other platforms it's on, because it basically follows the RSS feed that is aggregated out. So, for example, when you go to the After Movie Diner one, yes, you can see that it's on on Apple and Spotify, but it's also got all these other ones where you can listen to. So it gives you all the apps that you can listen to, iHeartRadio and Spotify and ones that I don't even know that I'm on. Right. It has Podcast Addict. I don't know what that is. It has Overcast FM. Apparently I'm on that.
Overcast, I know I'm on that one.
PCA, I don't know what that is. Castbox FM.
Yeah, Castbox.
Yeah, so Podcast Republic, I'm apparently on there. I'm on all these things. I had no idea. And it'll link you out to like the RSS feed and everything like that. So I love using Podlink because it means that no matter whether you're using Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever you're using, you'll be able to find us.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good idea. I never thought of it, because I've got kind of all the individual links on my site on dtvconnoisseur.blogspot.com. But yeah, I always say just look us up on your favorite podcatcher. But that's a good idea. I didn't think of that the aggregator lets you kind of choose which one you want. Because people have come to me and said, like, oh, I didn't know your podcast was on Amazon, because I listened to a lot of audiobooks on there. I could be listening on there. It's like, yeah, I didn't think to tell you, but I mean, I don't know where it is. I just put the After Movie Diner out there and Spreaker does the rest. So I have no idea where I am. But yes, all the links will be in the episode description, as always. Matt, this was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us yet again on another After Movie Diner episode, where we look at one movie starring people who I really would like to watch more of, and a VHS special. And you will probably be able to hear me next talking another PM Entertainment flick, T-Force, which I have somewhere here, starring the aforementioned Jack Scalia. Look at it, it's so beautiful on VHS. Look. You can even see the actress's nipples. Look. Oh yes.
In the shirt on the back there. Look.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, you can see the nipples through the shirt on the back of the VHS, which knows that it, makes you know that it's a good one. So yeah, we'll be doing more PM Entertainment next time on DTVC.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm excited. Just always excited to talk more PM for sure. Yeah, but
yes. All right, man. Well, look, this has been another long, wonderful, beautiful episode.
Yes.
And I'll hopefully have it out by May or June.
All right, sounds good. All right, perfect.